I get to have fun, and I get to play, and I get to experience life in a completely different lens. I do not see through a Bill Gothard lens anymore. I took those glasses and I shattered them with my feet and I threw them in the dumpster.
Lindsey, I've been looking forward to having you on as a guest for like, I don't want to say a year now, but a while. It's been a long time. Yeah. Whenever I first interviewed Chad and he told me about you, that was over a year ago, I think, actually. So maybe. Anyway, that being said, I feel like I feel like I've never befriended somebody's writing via email, via Instagram, via Facebook. And I just absolute kindred spirit vibes, absolute besties for the resties. I know this is going to be great. I know I just lost a bunch of people by saying besties for the resties. They're not going to watch the rest of the interview, and I apologize. I'll probably cut that out.
Yes, they will.
They'll be like, ugh.
We love each other already.
We do. And if you guys are in for a love fest, stick around. But at the same time, one of my favorite things about you, one of the things that I think is just really fascinating is we both love makeup. We both love hair. We both love fashion. I love your glasses. I have glasses that are stylish too. I feel like we're similar in that way, but also there's this whole other side of who you are that is just gut-wrenching, just absolutely gut-wrenching. And for anybody who's unfamiliar, you were a part of the Shiny Happy People documentary that came out last year, but I would love for you, in your own words, to tell us your story, who you are, and where are you going? Because you're doing so much with your story and with your name and your brand. And I'm just going to kiss your feet. That's what this is about. I'm just going to, let's make out.
Maybe not my feet, but we'll just give hugs. I love it. You're just like, where are you going? I'm like, I get up in the morning and I ask myself the exact same question.
Yeah.
I'm like, Lindsey, where are you going?
Because you'll post a joke on Facebook and then you'll post like a hardcore interview or article or whatever. Like I feel like in the morning you drink your coffee, you laugh at memes, and then you fucking grind. And then you're just like, here we go. Fuck Bill Gothard. How can we ruin his life today? Yeah.
I'm actually a little scared at how attuned you are to my behaviors. But I do. I like my morning time is when I look for like kind of my inspiration, my motivation, things that really move me online. Because I love the internet. Who doesn't? It's got its dangerous nightmares, but there's also a lot of amazing things that incredibly strong and smart individuals are saying out there. And sure, I could come up with some phrases. I usually stumble into them and I don't realize I'm saying something of interest. But when I read a bunch of these like inspirational and hard hitting memes, I am just like, yes, I need this quote to be on my Instagram. I need people to read this because I understand that the trauma I went through, I'm not alone in that. And there are so many other people that are also struggling and going through similar things. I don't think they would follow me if they weren't. You know, why would you go follow a cult survivor? Like, it just seems like, if you weren't in that, why would you want to really know?
Right.
If I'm wrong about that, viewers, please let me know. I'm very curious. But, so I'm like, I just want to motivate other people with things that motivate and resonate with me. And so that's where I start. Yeah. And then I get up and I go about my day. I mean, I'm a makeup artist and a hairstylist professionally. I've been doing this for over 15 years. Do makeup, self-taught makeup, and then just assisting an amazing artist. Her name is Lottie. If you guys are curious about her incredible work, go to @Lotstar, or it's Lotstar out on Instagram. But I've been assisting her for, I don't know, maybe 13, 15 years and learned at her feet, honestly, and have gone around the world doing fashion shows. And she's always inspired me to become as strong as I possibly can as a makeup artist. And then because at the time I was living in the Midwest, I was like, I'm not really working a lot because the kind of makeup I want to do is very fashion, creative, editorial. So I'm not working. I can do clean makeup, but at the time that I was doing this, it was in like the mid 2000s or in late 2000s, and everybody wanted you to do hair and makeup. So I was like, oh crap, I need to know how to do hair. So I actually stopped everything and I went to cosmetology school. Wow. So I got my cosmetology license, which sidebar was difficult because of my culty homeschooling upbringing,
Right.
which we can talk about later, but was
Yeah.
like really hard for me to even do and be in an environment of structured education.
Right.
I was having massive meltdowns because of it.
Wow. Wow.
But
And I
was like
think that just like,
determined.
well, I think also that just shows people that, it's easy to know that everybody has a story when you do something like host a podcast and you just talk to people all the time. But like the lady doing your hair for a photo shoot, maybe you've talked to her for 5 minutes, maybe you've been sitting in the chair silently, is a cult survivor. You know, see what I'm saying? Like people, human beings aren't just human beings. People have just
Stories.
insane stories and experiences, and it's just, and they're everyone around us has
Everybody.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
This
never
documentary
met a
showed me
person.
that.
Yeah,
It
I was gonna
really
say, I've
did.
never met a person who didn't end up at some point in our relationship reveal something just fucking wild.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
Everybody has a story. If
Yeah.
we are in tune to their energy and we listen and we ask questions, I mean, I'm always, as the hair and makeup artist on photo shoots, I kind of tend to become the parental therapist with the model that sits in my chair,
Yeah.
because they're going through so much. They're a lot younger than I am. And I'm just like, oh, honey, it's okay. Or I just feel like I'm giving them, like, I'm imbibing love and nurturing. Oh, I got goosebumps. But I'm like imbibing like love and nurturing on them, because even if they can't articulate what's going on, I can sense it. I'm
Yeah.
a very hypersensitive, empathic human being. And even just touching somebody can really give me like bad vibes or good vibes. I'm really hyper aware in that. And it was actually hard for me when I first started doing makeup and hair, because I could feel that transfer of something and I didn't know what it was, and it would really overwhelm me. But you move through it, and I was determined because I just loved creating and doing makeup and hair. But through all of that, I worked in New York City for 10 years, doing my thing, and then I moved out here to LA right after the pandemic-y kind of era. And I've been out here for almost 3.5 years. If you guys want to see my work, it's crazypretty.com.
Yay! Which I will link in the description, the Linktree.
And my Instagram. Trying to
so
get those numbers up.
Well, and so I got to ask you the question everybody's probably wondering, who's listening to this or watching this. How the hell do you go from a member of the IBLP cult, right, for with an actual like personal relationship with Bill Gothard? Like he wasn't just like the brand of the, like, you knew him like on a face-to-face basis, to an LA makeup artist. How does that
25 years, honey. That's how it happens.
how the
It
hell?
takes a long time. But I love that question, because I do think that it's, I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've done a lot of EMDR therapy, and it kind of forces you to go back to those bad places of yourself and address them. And, like I went back and I literally saved my younger self. I saved my teen self. I even saved the girl that was at headquarters, which is really nutty, that experience. But in doing so, I realized that at the time I didn't know what my future would be. I had no clue. I just knew that I had been prescribed in my upbringing that I would be a shiny, happy person that would get married to whoever my dad approved of. So whoever was the approved list, that would be the one that I would marry. Hopefully I would like him a lot. And I also hoped if I didn't like him, my dad would understand that and it wouldn't be a forced marriage. But I didn't know how that would look because of my very patriarchal, domineering, narcissistic fatherly upbringing. And so it was this like, I just hope whoever comes along, I marry him and he's a nice person. I didn't have a list of things of who I want, like, I hope he has blue eyes. I hope he's this. Yeah, I'm just like, I just hope he's kind. And I would even in my journals and diaries, I would literally say like, oh my gosh, I met this guy today. He has such kind eyes. Like it was never about like his voice or, oh my God, he's so sexy.
Yeah.
Like it was just, I need him to be kind.
Yeah. And so if for anybody who's listening to this and they're like, who's Bill Gothard? What is IBLP? In your own words, like what is IBLP, or what was that experience if you had to describe it?
IBLP stands for the Institute in Basic Life Principles. It is a non-denominational organization.
Bullshit.
For Christians.
Bullshit. Nobody's ever non-denominational. No such thing. People who listen to this know that's how I feel.
Pretty much fundamentalist.
Yeah, I was going to say, nope.
Yeah, he's very adjacent to some others that are out there, but he really is just in Christian patriarchy. But he started out when he was younger. He went to Wheaton College, which is a Bible college, and then he moved in. He moved into this like idea he had for this seminar, to like prison kid or not prison kids, but like I'm so sorry. He created this ministry for like young teens and youth and troubled youth and things like that. And it was called the Institute in Basic Youth Conflicts. But then when he started realizing he could really like open this up because it seemed to be really affecting people and he was getting bigger crowds, right? He was like, well, by all means, it's the Institute in Basic Life Principles, not youth conflicts, but basic life principles. And it's when you really sit down, instead of going like, oh yeah, it's the Institute in Basic Life Principles, IBLP, think about the words institute. In basic life principles.
That just warms my heart.
Very unassuming, right?
Like a warm blanket.
Yeah, it's just basic life shit, man. It's a booster pack to your Christianity is what I always have said, right? It's like, oh, I want the Tony Robbins, whatever the guy's name is. Like,
Tim Robbins we like.
Yes.
Tony Robbins.
But it's like, but you know what I mean? It's kind of like that, like motivational, oh, this is going to really get me further in my spiritual walk. And not to equate that they're the same at all, but just like that motivational type of conversation. And, people were getting into it, realizing like, well, this is really heavy stuff. This isn't basic, but he simplifies really difficult topics. And it kind of like slowly crock pot cooks you into a sense of, oh, well, there's all these problems in the world and Bill can solve them with his basic 7 non-optional life principles. And it's a week-long seminar that you would take. He had 2 seminars. One was called the basic seminar, of course. And then the advanced seminar, which you could not take the advanced seminar unless you went to the basic. Unless you gotta pile them up. Yeah. Yep. And those were going well. He was all across the US. Like he was selling out like larger mega churches, and not that they were really mega churches called at that time, but like these really big churches and stadiums and things like that, holding these seminars, like bringing in buku dollars. And then he was like, oh, the youth, he still really cares and concerns for the youth of our country. And he was like, it is just going to the dogs. And we've already had like our, kind of like revolution of, hippy dippy and, free love. And that's just out of control now. So we got to rein in our youth because they are just going the way of impurity. And their souls are on the precipice of being lost to the world. So he decided that for those who had gone through the basic and advanced seminar, if you want to keep your kids from being influenced by the world, which is all nasty, naughty, and horrible and of the devil, then you should homeschool them in my homeschooling program. And we're going to call that the the Advanced Training Institute. I was like, wait, it's not basic. The Advanced Training Institute, also known as ATI. It actually went through 3 iterations. It started out as the Advanced Training Institute of America. Then he got really bold with himself and it became ATII, the Advanced Training Institute International. And then he just dropped the last letter altogether and it's like the Advanced Training Institute.
Wow.
Period. He loves institutes and he likes basic and advanced things.
Yeah, he likes levels and he likes institutes.
And so, all the books, like I'll even show you, like all of the books that he would publish were very flashy looking, very educational. Yeah. Like remember the 90s, or the 80s. This is a book from the 80s. But like, yes. This is sitting on your bookshelf and you just feel like you're so informed, and look at how it's like an Encyclopedia Britannica set, Wow. And everything would have this like very prestigious institute-y, college level-y
That
kind of.
all looks like it was made by the same people who make the folders at funeral homes. Like, I bet it was like the same exact company.
My God, I'm dead. That's so amazing. That is, yeah, you're probably not wrong. But everything had this very like pompousy, like, look at how educated my materials look, but he hated secular education. And so through the homeschooling program, his idea was always you didn't need a college education because worldly knowledge puppets up a man. That worldly knowledge becomes pride and arrogance. And God forbid that you become prideful and arrogant and know shit.
Yeah. Well, and also
You
like,
know?
we'll probably end up touching on this more during the story, but like, there is a pattern of him recommending things that he blatantly does not do himself or follow himself, and people just what he doesn't have to, I guess. He just knows what's best.
What he's serving them.
Yeah, like there's some things that were like the pinnacle of his teachings, and like, am I like, nobody else noticed that he didn't do those things? Okay, all right.
There were people that noticed, and they were the ones that bounced. You know,
Right.
there were like because my dad was in the military, we ended up going to a lot of different churches across the country because we'd move and we'd find a new church. And there were some pastors that were like, no, you guys can do your ATI thing, homeschool your kids, do whatever you do, but you're not infiltrating my church with it. You know,
Good for them.
like you were, and so then we wouldn't stay. It was like, oh well, we're not really welcomed here, and you're not
We're being
fundamentalist
persecuted.
enough. Yeah, like you're
Just like
you're
the
just
pilgrims.
too worldly. You're too worldly. You know, you allow influences, and your kids watch movies, and oh my gosh, I watched your daughter wear a pair of shorts when they were playing volleyball at their like little youth party this weekend. My daughter can't
Straight
come.
to hell.
Yeah, just
Straight
boom.
to hell.
Flames are gonna engulf you at any moment.
And so with this program, whenever I talk to people who grew up in cult-like environments, my first question is, what do you think your parents were thinking? Like,
I wish I knew.
like, were they coming from a fundamentalist background and
No.
remaining in one, or were they just like, oh, this seems like a great direction for my daughter?
I will say, first of all, I don't know.
Right.
For me, it's mainly speculation with, a lot of stuff that I've tracked throughout the years. But
Yeah.
my dad was raised in a very a strong morals home.
Right.
My grandfather was Catholic. My grandmother, I mean, I guess I call her like somewhere in Baptist, Lutheran, Episcopalian, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Loved Jesus. I'll just put period on that.
Non-denominational.
She just loved Jesus. You know what I mean? And she was such an unassuming, loving grandmom to everybody, and just wanted everyone to be happy. She was not a massively fundamentalist, judgy person. So I don't know where my dad went into control and narcissism and patriarchal controls and domination. I really don't. It could be his personality. It could be, he became a Bible believing Christian. And I think the clarification comes because he was raised with a Catholic father when he was in high school. And then when he got into college, he was like in Bible studies, and that's where he met my mother. And she became a Christian, kind of because he said, I really care about you, but I can't marry you if you're not a Christian. So she was like, well, she had a very, very rough upbringing that had nothing to do with religion. And so my takeaway is really, she wanted to belong. And if you're in a fun, youth Christian group, college age, I mean, hey, it's going to be fun. This isn't fundamentalism, and you have
fun and
people that are
fundamentalist.
shiny and happy. But so she became a Christian, and she had already had me. So my dad is my stepdad. And then, and then I have a brother, and then my baby brother is also a stepbrother. So, so it was like we came to ATI, like sort of on a little bit of fumes and not being your classic, like, oh, we're already steeped family. It was, I was already in public school at that point. I was in the 3rd grade. My little brother was in 1st grade, and my youngest one had never gone to school at all. And then I just remember, I think I was like 6 or 7, and my parents went to one of the basic seminars, and they came home and started just changing things up. we're going to put the TV in the closet on weekends or during the weekday, or you're going to start wearing dresses a little bit more. And I'm like, ooh, why? Like, I was a tomboy,
Right.
like running around on the playground. I'm like,
Right.
I don't want this. I have to be a lady.
Right.
But they just, I don't know. Again, I don't know if it was a sense of belonging and they're like, ooh, we like this because these people seem to give us something to aim for, or if it was Bill Gothard's propaganda of fear, like the world is coming for your children.
Well, and it's interesting when you say that she already had you, because something I have noticed in especially American evangelical and fundamentalist churches is I have noticed that when secular women get involved, usually it's because they want to marry somebody who's like, I can't marry somebody who's not a Christian, or because they move somewhere and like the only social group is faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we see it with like Paul and Morgan. Like she was not devout until she was with
Right.
Paul. The church has a way of convincing women that they need to be forgiven for the life they lived prior.
Before.
So like, and so like, oh, I was totally fine being a single mom before, but now everybody's telling me that I should actually be ashamed of that, and that I'm actually lucky that he was interested. And you know what? Wow, like I'm kind of embarrassed now. I
Mhm.
guess I should start following their rules. And then whenever these women start to question the rules, it's like, well, you weren't very good at taking care of yourself before, so maybe you should just listen whether you like it or not.
Girl,
Um
right on the nose.
yeah, and so I wonder if like the minute you said like that he was your stepdad, I was like, "Oh, there it is. Somebody maybe speculatively
It is.
convinced her that she was actually like lucky that anybody wanted anything to do with her because
Yeah.
of her past."
Yeah. And I think I've always felt from my perspective of my mother that she just wanted to belong somewhere.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
you do get into it, and then your husband, who's a very controlling person, which maybe you didn't know beforehand, because there's always that moonlight period of like, oh, this is
Mhm.
amazing. But then you get into, oh, wow, now I'm homeschooling my children. I don't think my mom, just like was like, oh, I think someday I want to homeschool my kids.
Yeah.
you
Nobody
know,
in their right
like
mind. Nobody in their right mind. Nobody.
I will say there's a place for homeschooling. I'm not a full-on homeschool basher, but
No.
I do still believe that we need a lot more oversight than what our country gives. But
Yes.
yeah, like you're not like, oh, I'm a Christian, and 5 years later, you're like, you know what? I'm gonna homeschool my kid. What? Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't go to college to be an educator, which she only I think went through like 1 year of college, and there's no shame in that. But it's just like now you're responsible for educating your children. And so with that as a foundation, here's 54 booklets that Bill Gothard and staff and like a whole bunch of people that were his minions
That should go to jail.
agreed
It
should like all came together over some like fabulous retreat and created these booklets out of thin air, and it really reads that way.
And some of the shit in those
It's
booklets,
insane.
it is unreal. It's unreal. Like some of
Yeah.
the stuff in there, you're just like, how did this happen in the United States in modern day? Like this
Freedom of
is
religion.
some right, like this is some World War One learning about it in history level shit. This is not the internet was also around while this was going on shit.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Craziness.
Yeah. This is the 80s. So, like, yeah, the internet was not what we know it to be now. I mean, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have, I wasn't connecting to the internet at that age.
Yeah.
Like, the internet was for my dad at work. We didn't
Yeah.
have a computer. So,
Yeah.
everything was textbook and writing. And
Right.
we're going through these wisdom booklets. And
Wisdom booklet.
admittedly,
Ugh,
even just like the name,
I
but
know.
every family would go through them however they chose to. It wasn't like people were coming into our home being like, are you making sure that they're getting their math and sciences? So, it's stuff like that. It was just, well, whatever I do at home and I deem that that's enough, then it's enough.
Well, because your dad is the head of the household and he would never
Yeah.
allow anything to happen in the household that is not for his family and proper the way that he wants.
Right.
So I'm sure
That
it's
he
going
wouldn't
fine.
warrant.
Right.
Exactly. So like some families, like I know some kids that went on to go to college and get a degree and they work, in finance, or they, work in construction, even like they got like a what's the engineering degree and
Yeah,
things like that. And you're just like, this is great. I wish I'd had that. But I was not supplied the educational supplements. Now, my parents would say, yes, we did. We had booklets. We had Bob Jones. We had a Becca. We had
oh
ACT,
yes, sorry, so much better.
right? You know,
So
all of
much
the
better.
other Christian supplementals, but they were not I was not going through a science book from front to back.
Right.
That science book was a resource for me to go in and find a very specific, I was using it like a thesaurus. I was not learning from front to back in any
Right.
book ever.
Probably skipping some very intentional chapters.
Oh yeah, always. But when it
Yeah.
was like the Christian stuff, like it was kind of like, it's okay. But if it was a secular book, then yeah, I mean, you're either Sharpie markering out pictures. I mean, we did that for magazines. If they came into the home, we would either rip out a page or we would glue something over the picture if it was immodest or improper. Like there's so much policing of what you can and cannot see. It's unreal. Like,
wow.
we just like had so many like blinders on ourselves.
Yeah.
So from a young age, I was very aware of how much I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know, because I had spent three years or so in an actual structured school.
Interesting. So this wasn't, so you weren't like starting kindergarten in this
No,
stuff.
I was in public school to the 3rd grade and they pulled me out of 3rd grade.
Wow.
Yeah. And my middle brother, they pulled out of 1st grade. So we had a semblance of understanding of how a school worked and what we do in a classroom. And so even in the documentary, I was just like, what in the honky tonk is this? Because my mom had like milk crates stacked up, and then we had plywood with contact paper over it. And then our desks faced each other and we were in a basement. And I was just like, wow, this is very not stimulating.
Yeah, that's some like Buffalo Bill type shit. Sounds like
honky tonk.
Like
girl.
if you tell me wood planks and milk crates in a basement, I'm calling the cops. I'm like, some shit is going down there.
This is weird.
And so,
Yeah.
So obviously you recognize things were different. Was it just the school that you were like, this isn't the same, or like at what point was the church and like what the church was teaching you also kind of revealing itself to you to be weird or off in any way?
You know what's really weird? I would actually say that I wouldn't put the majority of my issues at the feet of church.
Really? You're on the wrong podcast. I don't know.
Bye. Yeah. I see that more so because I was so heavily influenced and steeped every single day in Bill Gothard.
Yes.
Like Bill Gothard, yes. He is not a minister. He is not a religion. Do you know what I mean? Like he's not like Billy Graham. Did Billy Graham have a church?
To be honest,
I don't remember. I don't know. I don't think he did.
He had a little bit of everything. I know that he led churches. I'm going to Google that.
Right. But Bill Gothard never did that. He just had an organization with his quote ministry where he was peddling out all of this product, all of these materials. So though he's not a pastor, preacher, missionary, or anything like that, he was our person. He was the person we looked up to, and he was the standard by which we held everybody. So if we went to a church, my dad would decide that church is good for us because it aligns with Bill Gothard's teachings. So if a church did not align with Bill's teachings, we were out. So do you know what I mean? So it was like we had, and people always say like, oh, that was an ATI church. That is incorrect. ATI and IBLP do not create churches. However, because the fundamentalism is such a strict conservatism, they would flock to a church that had those same strict beliefs. And all of a sudden you would have a church full of ATI families because it's probably the only one within 300 miles that adheres to what they want to hear every Sunday.
Yes.
So I don't particularly, I mean, yes, churches are bad too, but I don't blame the church for how I see it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's like
I'm splitting hairs really, but
no, I don't think you're splitting hairs at all. I think that's an important distinction because I think what you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is it was the textbooks and the lessons, and it was the Bill Gothard brand that was so messed up. And that brand was often housed in churches that provided or that aligned with what Bill Gothard wanted out of congregations that followed him. But it wasn't that church. You're not like, you know, First Baptist Church of Western
Bill
Missouri.
Gothard.
Right.
The Institute.
Yeah, of the Institute of the average of the
middle
of the basic peoples. Yeah.
Looking for advancement.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, Billy Graham, I guess, had a church for a little bit right after he got out of school in Chicago, and then he was just a traveling evangelist.
So he also, I believe, was at Wheaton College alongside of, and Bill also went to. All those Billies. But yeah, so I feel like for myself, and I can only speak for myself, not my parents or my brothers, but I could not see a church without it going through the lens of Gothard's materials.
Yes.
And I would look at everybody through the lens of how Bill Gothard judges everybody too, which is incredibly harsh.
Yes.
You know, and creates no one safe.
Way?
That I was like Judgy McJudgerson.
Well, like, did you feel like, so for example, when I was my most religious, I know that I judged people all the time, but I felt correct. I was like, yeah, harsh, but fair, you know?
Right, I'm right.
Right. Like, and I wasn't sure if you felt like it was judgmental or if you just remembered like judging people for certain things.
I knew from a fairly young age that I was not going to get through my life if I didn't imposter. And so I mean, it was very strange for me to start looking back through my journals and reading them because they start from about 8 years old and go through till I was at headquarters. And I know what's happening in the stuff I'm not saying, like what's going on in between the lines. And I was like, oh my God, I'm writing this, but that's not how I was feeling at the time. And it's wild that I know that. And so yes, I would look at people through the lens of Bill Gothard because I did not have a choice. So if I'm like, you guys stop it, like shit, like the dress is shorter, but I think it looks really good on her. That would not be acceptable to ever say.
Right.
I like people. I like looking at people. I love beautiful people. That's why I work in the industry I work in. I love weird looking people. I love alien faces. I like bodies. I just think they're people are fascinating to me. But if I was in a supermarket and there was a really attractive guy that was shirtless, I would have to turn my head the other way. I couldn't inspect him, you know, or be like, wow, you look great. I would have to, you know, follow the rules.
Gross.
Yeah. Yuck.
Get out of here with that rockin' bod.
Is that yuck? No. But yeah, yes, yuck. But, you know, so things like that, or I knew that if like standing alone was a big principle with Bill, especially with us teenagers. And, you know, standing alone, meaning if you go over to a friend's house and they're watching a movie, I don't know, Batman, and you're just like, I can't watch secular shows. There's cussing, people are wearing tight suits, like it's fantasy, all of the things that fundamentalists just loathe and reject. And I would have to literally say to the person I'm with or their parent, hi, I've given my life to the Lord Jesus Christ and I can't watch this. Was I doing it because I was an arrogant prick of a child? Actually, no. Did I want to go watch that movie? Fuck yes, I wanted to go watch the movie. I wanted to know all the stuff I didn't know. But I knew that if I did that, I was going to get in some massive trouble back home. Yes. And because corporal punishment was a heavy part of my upbringing, I was like, it is better to feel absolutely embarrassedly ashamed right now and do this humiliating thing, which doesn't hurt me technically. It makes me look like an asshole at, 12 years old, but I didn't know that either. I'm just like, well, I'm standing up for the Lord. At least my parents will be proud of me, right?
Yeah,
so you tout it out.
They really had us at like 10 years old being morally superior to like the neighbor's mom.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
and we don't know what the hell we're talking about.
Right. Can you imagine? I am 33 years old. And if a child looked me in the face and tried to harness moral superiority,
yes,
I would go to jail. I would be like, okay.
I would laugh. Yes. I would laugh my butt off.
I would
just
say
be like,
something.
Oh, okay, kiddo. What scripture does that come from? Ephesians, blah, 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 blah. Be like, okay. All right, well, go on home now. Everybody else is going to have snacks and watch a movie. I hope you live your best life.
I would lose my job over the TikTok clip of my response. Yeah, like that's, I would never lay hands on a child, but I would give them the what for verbally. Probably. Yeah. I don't know. No, I'd probably laugh, to be honest. I'd probably laugh and just be like, go home. Like, get out of here.
I'd be like, do your parents believe in corporal punishment? All right, I'm going to call CPS, but you'll be okay, kiddo.
Honestly, what I would probably do is I'd probably be like, look, I won't tell your mom. I won't tell your mom. Like, right? I'd be the bad influence.
Full-on ally.
I'd be like, it's the Grinch, man. You've never seen the Grinch? I won't tell your mom. We didn't watch the Grinch.
No, not at all. We don't watch that stuff when you're here. Wink, wink.
Definitely not.
Oh my God, I'd be such a bad influence at this point. Yes. Yeah, it'd be pretty bad. But it wasn't, I think that there were definitely times too where I did feel that confusion of like, do I really believe this now? Like, I think I would check in and be like, do I think God is almighty? Do I believe in him? And I'm like, I have very specific prayer lists and none of them have been answered. So I don't know how much more strict for Jesus I can get right now. But something's not working. And I just started getting to a point where I'm like, if God is there, which I'm still trucking along with that because I need to survive in the space I'm in where everybody does believe him, that he exists. But I'm just like, if he's there, he really fucking hates me.
Yes.
This man is not interested in my existence.
Yes. That is something that I cannot drill into people's heads enough, is what they teach in so many churches, so many American Christian churches, at least, that the reason you're not hearing or feeling or seeing God is because you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
You're not doing it right. You're not praying enough. You're not praying hard enough. You're not serving God in the way
seeds of bitterness.
Or my favorite one, which is he's actually been speaking to you, but not in the way that you want, so you're ignoring him. He's been giving you your answers. You just don't like them, so you're waiting. Like,
that's like asking someone for $500, being like, I really specifically need $500 and I will pay you back. I will be so grateful to you. And they're like, and I'm like, but where is it? I thought you were going to give it to me. Oh yeah, I am. But by the way, I put it 4 miles away and I hid it under a rock. So if you can find it, you have a 4-mile perimeter that you have to go search for it. I'm like,
but if you go searching for it, that also means you're weak. So, you know,
and you're also not relying on God to somehow bring it 4 miles to your door because I don't know, you're just not worthy enough yet. You have not prayed it hard enough to move that envelope to you.
Yes. And we set up the system that put you in debt $500 to begin with. So
right. It's from all that tithing. Sorry, you don't have that $500. But you know what? The pastor loves his jet.
Just like, God.
I know, you're just like, calm down now. Okay.
Like, just as an adult looking back, and I'm not even talking about like my parents or anything. My parents actually never did anything to me at all, like the religious trauma wise. But like looking back at like what the church would say and what the Sunday school teachers would say and what parents would say and what like the general understanding of what morality was and what your roles were and what the rules were and like how is this going on? Like I've said it once, we'll say it again. Like, this sounds like some medieval shit that we're supposed to be learning about and being like, glad that doesn't exist anymore. Wow. Glad that went out with the Black Plague. But it's like, it's still...
It is aliving and thriving, everyone.
And it's getting a tax cut from the government.
Yep. Like, and I hate to be the doom and gloom patrol, but I just don't feel like that will change in the climate, especially that we're in right now, because Christians have fought so hard for decades to get to where we are at now in our country. They have fought for decades behind the scenes, trying to push the buttons and pull the puppet strings in government to get us to where we are today. And so even trying to change laws, to have oversight for homeschoolers, not just religious homeschoolers, but all of them. There is a lot of neglect that happens when it comes to physical abuse. If you are going to bring your child into your home, someone needs to show up and make sure that your child is not being neglected and harmed. And I don't care if you don't like it. When you tell me you don't, that tells me you're very aware that what you are doing is not appropriate.
Right. Exactly.
The ones that have nothing to hide and are educating to the best of their ability and aren't leaving marks on their children emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually are fine.
Yep.
Fine with it. Open the door. Come on in.
But that's because the secular world doesn't understand the way God wants things done. They're gonna put you in jail for praising God.
Yeah, right? Because one of the real big badges of pride with super hyper conservative Christians is persecution. They live for it, they feast on it, they drool and beg for it. They do want persecution because it proves to them that what they're doing is on the right track to what God is requesting of them, because you aren't in the right path of God unless you're being persecuted. Yes. So by all means, persecute the Christians. Even if you're not, they think you are. It's amazing on TikTok, the conversations I have with people, and they just think I'm coming for them. And I'm like, I'm just saying, don't hate your kid.
No.
What's
meanwhile,
wrong with you?
Right. And meanwhile, I talk to cult survivors on a regular basis who are like, I don't know if my story is bad enough for your podcast.
Oh, I know.
Maybe it's, and you're like, the actual people who have faced persecution are like, I don't know about that. I don't think I've suffered enough trauma. And the people who like, this country was built to support and lift them up and give them what they want and they need and to create laws to make their lives easier are like, I had to say happy holidays today. And I don't think I'll ever get over it. What is this country coming to?
It is so petty and dramatic for nothing. Can go love God. If that is what makes you happy and makes you feel good at the end of the day, go love your Jesus, love your book, love your stuff. But leave the rest of us that don't want it. Please leave us out of it.
Yes.
I've been harmed by it. And I love how the other day I was told as well, like, well, sure, you were raised this way, but you didn't become a real Christian. And I was like,
I hate that.
But I'm also like, and I care why? Like that you're like, that's the complaint you have about me, is that I wasn't Christian. I didn't really become one, because in their mind, somehow in their logic, if I had been a real authentic Christian, these things wouldn't have happened to me in the name of God.
Well, guess what?
Like, your cognitive dissonance gets a gold star.
The most dedicated on their knees, worshiping, praying, raising their children, anointing with holy water, borderline whipping themselves on the back Christians who are, you could never find a more fundamentalist, more evangelical Christian, are being interviewed as atheists on my podcast on a regular basis because their heart was broken by a God who never responded. Yep. I hate when people say, oh, you weren't enough of a Christian. You weren't enough of a Christian then if it didn't work. No, the problem was you were the most Christian you could have been. And you could not get back what you were told would come when you did those things.
We did not get what we were sold.
The least Christian people I've ever met are the ones who have Christ follower in their bio on Instagram, right? And I'm not talking about everybody. I know some Christians, including my best friend, wonderful, beautiful, lovely person, embodiment of what a Christian is supposed to be. Right. But she also doesn't take anybody's shit either, right? She's like, she doesn't take anybody's shit. And I'm sure there's Christians out there that would be like, oh, she also doesn't. Because, there's nothing worse than being the wrong kind of Christian to other Christians.
Right. There's levels.
But, sorry, it just really makes me so mad when people say, well,
but it's true.
If you were a real Christian, I was.
And I'm like, you weren't, Sydney. Sorry.
I guess not.
You did not get enough rug burn on those knees praying in your closet, honey.
I guess sobbing as a 12-year-old wondering why God hates me so much he won't talk to me and he killed my cat doesn't make me Christian enough.
You know what? That's where we went wrong, actually. We sobbed. Yeah. We didn't leave it. Yeah. We didn't leave it to God. We did not surrender every bit about ourselves. Yeah. And we didn't put those tears to God. Yeah.
You know what? I'm just going to stop this recording right now. I'm going to take down all my episodes. I've discovered. Oh no. Can I get rebaptized? Is that possible? Will they even allow me in the church? I don't even think I deserve it. Hey, it's me. My membership seems to have expired.
Update the card.
Yeah. I was just wondering, how much do I owe in back tithe? I can start a payment plan. I don't know. I owe the IRS a lot of money too, so you're gonna have to.
I know that God's got my money like 4 miles away still, but I mean, someday that'll come too. As I really show you, I shouldn't have cried when I was 12.
Right.
Oh my God, I
Ugh.
love this.
Ugh.
Yeah. So in seeing people through the lens I was forced to wear, it did make it very complicated for me because I so badly yearned to be out in the world, as they call it, when you're this conservative, crazy Christian. It's like I wanted to be in the world. I wanted to go and have sleepovers with these, crazy girls that wear eyeliner. Like, how fun would that be? And sometimes I would do, like, I would be allowed if there was, like, my parents were chaperoning or something, and we would have like a youth thing, and then the girls, they'd all pile around me and be like, we want to do your hair, we want to put on some makeup. And I remember having this one picture taken, I think I was like 14, maybe. Well, it might have been even like between 12 and 14, maybe 14. I look insane. Like, I look like a grown woman because of like how they style my hair.
Wow.
And then like the bathing suit that I was wearing, I didn't have a t-shirt over it yet. And it's like one of
Wow.
those oldie 80s, you got the big cone boob cups. So I looked like this like strange, like child but woman kind of thing. And I look back at
You
that
mean
picture now
like
and I'm
a
so cringe.
teenager? Yeah.
Yeah, like a teenager, but for me, way mature, way
Right.
more mature. I was like, this is for like my mother in her 30s. Like, I
Right.
shouldn't be looking like this. And I was freaked out. I'm like, if my parents see this, I'm toast. And I remember like
Yes.
going and wiping off the makeup and like brushing out my hair, but I was like, oh, that was so much fun.
Yeah, and that idea, and that's something that I feel like is not talked about enough either, is that fear of being punished for growing up.
Yes.
Like, you're growing up, you're interested in boys, you're interested in fashion and makeup, you wanna start wearing mascara, you wanna start wearing something that isn't, like, pink and frilly, you are literally growing up at the pace that you should be growing up, and you have that anxiety and that fear of, "But what if my mom sees? What if my
You're
mom
pushing
finds
on the
out?"
wall that's keeping you confined. Yeah, you're
Yes,
like,
and,
I
like
can't go outside these boundaries. They're impossible, but I am growing beyond my boundary.
and you're literally just growing up. And to
Yeah.
me, that's, like, the saddest thing, and you hear it with guys too, where they're like, "Oh, I'm going to hell because I got a boner in my sleep,"
Yep.
and you're just like, as much as like, "Oh, haha, that's funny," like, it's also
No, it's
just
terrifying.
tragic.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
terrifying for them. It's this mystical conversation, where it's like, oh, God's going to come and get me because of things that are happening in my body I can't control. Like for girls, we had to start hiding everything about ourselves.
Yep.
A second I
Yep.
started developing, it was like strap a bra on that and start wearing poofy clothes, wear a
Yep.
more billowy shirt. And it had
Yep.
to have sleeves. I couldn't have sleeveless shirts anymore. And I couldn't wear shorts and I couldn't wear pants. It always had to be skirts. They couldn't be knee length. They had to be down to my ankle. Like
Right.
this whole Duggar thing. Sorry, I'm going to like go on a tangent. The
Go for it.
Duggars do not know the 80s and 90s ATI kids. They
Wow.
are so disconnected. We
Yeah.
were wearing all the tent dresses and everything down to our ankles.
Everything that Target sells now is, like, modern
Right.
fashion, and
Oh,
you're
it's
like,
so
"What the fuck?"
triggering. I'm like, ah! I
Little
just want to
house
take
on the
that
cold
skirt and like,
prairie.
yeah, I just want to take a scissors and just like, what? Just like
Yeah.
make a big old slit up the back. But if we had a skirt that was tighter and had a slit in the back, it had to have the privacy panel where you'd like fold up some fabric and sew it in the seam so that you could still walk. It was so bunchy and hot and ridiculous. Again, sleeves had to be down to the elbow or long sleeve to the ankle, or to the ankle, to the wrist. I have had, to me, I mean, this is not something I point out because I have any care about it, but it was constantly told to me, your clavicles are a problem. And so I would have to wear higher shirts up because of my clavicles popping. And I'm just like, I didn't really understand it. I was just like, oh, I don't like wearing stuff like tight to my neck and you have to wear a button and it's a bibbed collar. And I felt a fool. I felt
And
so ridiculous.
And then it's put on you to cover up, and then
Yep.
it's also put on you when covering up doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're covering up because apparently boys can't handle where their eyes are going, even though the Bible says to spoon out your own eyes if you can't stop looking at women inappropriately, which is interesting.
They've
Jesus's
never
teachings
followed
are
that.
the rules until
Never followed it.
But then also when you do cover up and you still get like sexual harassment, it's like, wow. You did
You were
that.
asking for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, you
Your
did that.
shirt was probably a little too sheer, or your skirt
Yep,
was showing that hip a little with a waist. You had a waist, God forbid.
yep,
It
yeah.
crossed your ankles in church and someone saw it.
And, like, in my opinion, surely there has to be some kind of legal repercussion that's equal to sexual abuse when it comes to also stifling and shaming development. Like, there's got to be some name for what it's called when you basically torture your teenager for growing up, for
Right?
mature, you know what I mean? And, like, because that can fuck you up being
Oh, it
ashamed of
does.
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yep, yep, the
And I'm
body
just like,
shame that you feel. No one
yes.
even really has to shame you for it. Like, let's say that, I don't know, you go through and you just happen to be one of those people that just wasn't on the radar of people, and you were able to kind of skirt by, haha, no pun intended,
It
but
better be a long one.
you're able to just kind of move through, then, you may not have as much body image issues. Maybe you do. Like, to me, you're still going to have massive body issues regardless of whether or not you were like me, where I was constantly getting attacked and picked on, and not picked on, but corrected.
Yeah.
For it wasn't like, I don't know, Lindsey. It was like, Lindsey, you need to go change your skirt. Or Lindsey, especially at headquarters, one of the girls told me that when you were walking, your bottom button came unbuttoned. We need to address that. Like, what?
And
You
she didn't just
saw
say your
4
buttons.
inches of my
Yeah.
ankle to almost shin? Like, God forbid. Like, I got so skeptical at headquarters. I was just like, you guys are insane people. Like, stop it. But yeah, I was constantly conscious of my body, to the point where I was wearing like those double, like, short Spanx. Back again, remember back in the 90s, because those things were so hard to get into. Holy
Yes.
crap, they were not the materials they are now. And
No.
I would wear 2 of them to flatten out my butt and my hips as much as possible, so that I could wear skirts that were a little bit lighter materialed, because I was suffocating when it was so hot or uncomfortable. Then you'd wear pantyhose on top of it. For the blouses, I would wear a tank top under the blouse. So I am just layered up in fabric. And it actually took me over a decade after leaving, maybe even longer, to stop wearing a tank top underneath my t-shirts.
Yes. Yeah. Like, all of my pictures from, like, high school and the beginning of college are just like layers, 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 layers. And I didn't even make that connection until like a month ago. I thought, like, I was like, why was I always just like covered? Now I'm just cold all the time. I'm covered all the time, but I'm just freezing. But like back then it was like, either I was embarrassed because I had boobs that grew faster than everybody else. And I didn't, when you have the face of a preteen, but you've got the chest of an adult, you don't know what to do with either one of
You're
them.
like,
Yeah. And it's just like, it's just so sad.
and
And so,
somehow it's your fault you have all that. How
oh yeah,
dare you go
definitely my
and,
fault.
men to stumble. And
Yep.
again, men, you're a teen, men, get
Yep.
your act together.
Gross. Go to
Disgusting.
jail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do not go. Go to
Just
jail.
go straight to
Direct to jail.
straight to jail.
But even with that, like your bra, nothing about your bra being on you could be revealed. So that's why I would layer up, because I'm like, you can't even see like where the seam would be, because that's now an eye trap. And how
Right.
dare you be, an eye trap to
Yes.
anybody. And
And
the women were just as bad at
worse.
shit. The dudes were kind of like, I think I saw a bra. Whereas the women were like, I saw a bra.
Yes.
You
Yes.
were causing our young men to burn in hell.
Yes. And you're also like, so you're worried about your husband being led astray by seeing the bra of a 17-year-old. Hello?
They know their husbands, don't they?
Yeah. Sorry if I yelled. I don't know how that sounded on the podcast. I apologize. Sound warning.
You'll see the spike when you go back.
Yes, yeah. So you've mentioned the term headquarters quite a few times. And
Yeah.
so for anybody who's listening to this who maybe they're not aware of what that is, what is headquarters when it comes to IBLP?
It's quite literally their home base, their corporate headquarters for their ministry.
First of all, how fucked up is that? Why does a ministry have a corporate headquarters? What? And also doesn't have to pay taxes. You can't have it both ways. You can't have no taxes and a corporate headquarters. I'm confused how that
I
works.
don't confess to know how their financials went. If they were paying taxes, like maybe property taxes. But even then I have no clue. I was not in the finance side. I don't have the brain of a finance person. But the headquarters is where Bill lived nearby, like maybe 2 miles away. So he'd tootle into work every day. And then the rest of his staff, usually the directors of each department were married men that were ex-pastors or ex-ministers of some kind, or just like really devout Christian dudes that were like, oh, I want to be a part of your ministry. So
I want to benefit from this patriarchal company.
Right. Yeah. Like, you align with me. Let's go do it to more people. But because he was still doing the basic and advanced seminars, and he had the homeschooling seminar, like he was expanding his ministry presence. And so headquarters is just really the home base, and all of the materials that he was printing at one point, these materials were being printed at headquarters as well.
Right.
They had a production center, and so he was self-publishing,
and
all of his
correct
material.
me if I'm wrong, it was like a requirement that you serve at headquarters, right? If you were...
It wasn't a requirement. It was more if you wanted to work at headquarters, there were requirements for that.
Got it.
You would have to work at some of the other training centers, which people, by the way, like Hobby Lobby has actually gifted Bill like locations for $1. So he was being gifted like hotels and stuff like that at very minimal, low, sleazy rates. So, and then he would come in and he would bring in the alert team, which if you guys watch Shiny Happy People, you saw the alert guys. They were just basically grunt labor workers that would come in and flip these places so that Bill could bring in different branches of his ministry. Indianapolis is one of them. And they were all training centers is what they were called, which always like, bleh. But the training center, yeah, and they would be
red flag.
Yeah, it's concerning. But they had Indianapolis, Dallas, Oklahoma, and then they also had Little Rock, which was more of like a log cabin ministry program, which is where Trouble would go. Yeah, that's where Josh Duggar was sent when he first did his naughties. He was
went
sent
to an
there.
IBLP place.
Yes.
They're
not sending him anywhere else, baby. No,
yeah. I mean, I knew he went to like a terrible, like religious, like.
That was IBLP.
Wow.
Yeah, keep it all internal. Yeah.
Jeez, Louise. And so when you went to headquarters, was that something that was exciting for you? Was it?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Because I bypassed all the requirements.
Really?
Yeah, because Gothard saw me at a seminar. My brother and I were teaching. Yeah.
Honey, never mind. It starts real quick. Never mind. Not good.
You're like, wait, I was excited for you. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah, because Bill Gothard saw me. Oh, no. And you were a teenager. Oh, God. Oh, no.
I love you. I feel like you're just like reading ahead in the book. You're like, nope, I know where this is going.
I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, God. Oh.
Sorry, your response is amazing. Your eyes are so expressive. It just corrects me. I'm like, oh my God. But I had already been to like, here's kind of an interesting like side note that I don't think I've ever really talked about before is like everybody who all the teenagers or just kids that were raised in the Advanced Training Institute, which basically meant we were homeschooled by Bill Gothard's materials. You're lucky if you have a more educational, bandwidth and stuff that you were informed with, depending on your parents. Most of us were stunted, right? We were educationally neglected. But Bill set up this system where it's like, well, if he would, where do I even start? He would start with 5 years of single service. So when you're still young, let's say around 15, for girls, it kind of is when you get your courtship ring, your purity ring between you and your father. So you're making this commitment to your dad that he owns your heart. I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail, but you get your purity ring, courtship ring, promise ring, if you're more Baptist and like more mainstream and not Fundie, but you're like, I'm basically promising that you're going to take care of my heart, Dad. And if there's anyone that kind of catches my eye, I will inform you of it so that you can continue to protect my heart. Did I ever do that? Hell no. But but around that time of 15, when you're female or male, because this is very, male or female environment,
Right.
you would make a 5-year promise of single service to the Lord. And Bill's kind of pulling it from Jesus's ministry, where he had like that term of like 30 to 33, where he was really just like, that's where Jesus had his ministry time period. So he kind of stole it from that and is like, when you're young, focus on ministry, focus on being a shining light to the world. Don't look for partners and love and romance and things like that, because what do we need it for anyway? Just put your heart into what God wants you to do. Find your life calling. And of course, the life
As long
calling
as
is
that
out
life
of the
calling,
Bible.
right. I was going to say, as long as that life calling is IBLP appropriate.
Right. And he would probably to this day be like, oh no, I wouldn't expect that. But I mean, what else do I have to look at? Like, I'm like, am I going to go and like, I want to spend 5 years, I don't know, as a jeweler. I think that's my life calling. Like, what does that have to do with anything? That's not biblical and scriptural. And,
I
that's
don't think I want to have kids.
And,
that's the devil's calling. That's
okay. If you don't want to have kids
Yeah.
right now, because 5 years of single service, I would love to have you until you're 20. So perfect. Don't want children for now. However, keep it on the back burner because you will need to have them when you are married. But so in those 5 years, it's like, well, what do all of us do? So he had created these journals, faith, virtue, and knowledge journal. And so when you're like still at home, you're going through these journals and it's like, go through the whole Bible and write out your insights. And it's so droll. It just feels like meaningless work, mindless, meaningless. Keep your kid, just keep their attention over here so that they don't want to be in the world, and just make it complex. And it's just mind numbing and it's frustrating. And again, it's hampering your ability to mature and grow in the world because you're just staring at this crap. So if you finish the faith journal, you could then go and teach at children's institutes, which were kind of like Sunday school when people were in the basic and advanced seminars.
Basic and advanced.
Right?
I know those words.
Yeah, so we're going to go back to IBLP, but that's for everybody in the whole world that wants to attend. There's no real barrier to entry with that. ATI, there's a very heavy barriers to entry to be a homeschool family, because you are a full reflection of Bill Gothard at that point. You can't be non-Christian. You can't have kids living outside the home. There cannot be rock music. You can't have TVs. Your children have to dress modestly. The list goes on and on. Adopted children could be an issue. They want to know the origin of that adoption. They want to blah, blah, blah. It's very invasive. It's invasive.
What was considered a bad origin of adoption?
They just want to know where these kids are coming from. Because they feel like generational sins. Like, what was the sin of these parents, and what are you bringing into your home? And could you be bringing potential like devil possession and all this other stuff into your home? Could they influence your other godly children and take them down a dirty path? Like, I mean, it was insidious. So going back to like, if I finished one of these journals as a young teen, well, then your opportunity opened up. Like, oh, you could teach at a Children's Institute seminar. I already know the damn materials because I've spent the last 10 years in it. So cool for me. We're just like free labor ambassadors, and we're actually not free. We're paying to do it.
That's crazy.
So I'm doing the work and I'm paying to go and be in the Lord's ministry.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Sorry, just had to let that out.
It's okay. I was internally screaming my whole life, so you can do it out loud.
It's only crazy because it's true. Like if I had turned this story in when I was getting my MFA, if I had turned this into one of my fiction classes, they would not have accepted it. They would have been like, this doesn't work.
Yeah, but it's real. Trust me.
No, that's the crazy part is like not only is it real, but it was everywhere. Like they were not hiding. It's not like some cults that like hide away and you like don't know they exist in there. No, he was out. He was on TV. He was selling VHS tapes and textbooks. Yes. Plain sight. That's what's infuriating about it. It's one thing to be like
that is everywhere around you.
It's one thing to be like, oh my God, we had no idea that was going on with those children next door. It's another thing to be like, we knew the whole time.
Right. But also families do a very good job of hiding what they're really doing inside the home.
True. And that's true.
Because when the children come out, just like in 19 Kids and Counting, anytime that camera was on, those kids were like beautifully behaved. And I'm like, you don't get there without discipline. You do not get there without harm. Sorry.
And it's fucked up. I feel bad because we grew up in the same hometown, and I would like play with them on like there was a restaurant called AQ Chicken that had 25-cent kids night. You could get like a kids meal for 25 cents. So of course they were there, right? And so we would be there.
$10 dinner.
But I remember like as a kid, everybody in town always talked about how, and this was before they were on TV or anything, they were just famous for being the Fundie family in town.
Right.
And people would always be like, you know, the Duggars, man, they are really the epitome of like what children should be like, how they should act. They're a Christian family. And I remember saying things like, you know, I don't mind if people have as many kids as they want, as long as they take really good care of them, kind of like the Duggars. And like knowing what I know now, I feel so bad. Like we had the same piano recitals and stuff. And like, I remember just focusing on all the wrong stuff. Like, wow, they were good at piano. They were dressed so cute. They're so polite. They're so well-mannered. And like, I know I was a kid. I know I was like, you know, 6 through, you know, 12.
But you're envying them, maybe jealous of them,
I was
idolizing them.
I was jealous.
You're like, oh my God, how are they so good?
Yes, I was jealous of them. Like they were the reason I quit piano. I'm not gonna lie. Like they were so good. They were so good, and we were the same age. But man, and that's why like I will talk shit about their parents all day long. Day long. I'll talk shit about Josh. I'll talk shit about their parents all day long. But the girls, man, I just feel so
It's hard. It's hard. Yeah, it's really hard. I kind of have a hard stop about the Duggar kids too. Jill and Ginger, I have a little bit of a different opinion because they keep putting themselves out there now that they are adults.
They're so grown up content.
I will come for you, Ginger. Yeah. I have opinions, you know.
Yeah, and they're grown up content.
Exactly.
Grown up content. Like
you're now taking that trauma and you're doing your thing with it. And I feel like you have decided you are fair game to have these conversations with.
That's
everyone else. I will not. Like, I hate when people are like, oh my God, what do you think about like Jessa Jokazaya? Like, I don't know their kids' names, but like, what do you think about what they're doing right now? And I'm like, don't care. I hope they're living their best life. I hope they've left the abuse and neglect. And abuse does not always have to be hitting and sexual.
Like, in fact, sometimes it can be worse when it's not.
Exactly. Absolutely. There are times where I'm like, I would have preferred X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Like there were times it's like, spank me instead, please. Like, you know, like my parents weren't like that, but other people's, you're just like, oh.
Yeah, that was mine. But, so when you're getting to these children's seminars and you're teaching that there, you can, you know, you start to get a rapport with the people that hire, or, you know, it really is hiring. But when people are like, we're going to invite you, they don't ever use it that way, right? They're like, we want to invite you to teach at this next seminar in Atlanta or in Orlando. And you're like, oh my gosh. And they love brother-sister teams, familial teams, because you have to teach on a team. You need more than one person when you got like 15 little kiddos and you're young teens yourself. So they loved when they could partner siblings up. And so my brother and I were like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do the Children's Institutes. So we did like 2 or 3 of them. And on the third one, I met Bill Gothard. Now I had already also gone to this female kind of like, what do you call them? Like a refinement school. Bill Gothard had this thing. Yeah, there you go. Finishing school. It was 8 weeks long. It was another Bill Gothard program. It was at the Dallas Training Center and it was called Excel. And it was like excellence in something, character and liberty or loyalty or something like that. Oh, he loves his acronyms. I mean, I'm surprised he wasn't in the military. But so I went to that course at 15. And then a year later, I'm like teaching some of the seminars. I might have been 16 actually, but not that it really matters. But like a year later,
so young. I don't know. I was thinking you meant like
16 years old.
21.
Oh no. Because now I'm in my single service years, right? So like you just got to go in there and like. But also I'm like, get me out of my house. There's a lot of abuse going on at home. I just want to go explore. But I thought I was misled in that, oh, I want to be a missionary. I want to go and work for the Lord, but not in my hometown. Like I want to go out and do things that are more outreachy. I realized when I started getting into fashion and I was traveling, it had nothing to do with ministry.
Right.
I wanted to travel, and I didn't
Yeah.
understand that until much later on, that it had nothing to do with like a desire or drive for God. I wanted to go to Russia when they had the Russia ministry. I was trying to go to Taiwan. I put in all of my submission papers. I was praying for God to give me all the money for it so that I could like raise that, because it was like $2,500 back in the 90s. And I'm like, how do I go this much money? You know, it's like, trust God, trust God. Well, I didn't get to go to Russia. Well, I didn't get to go to Taiwan. And I'm like, what am I meant to do, Lord Jesus? I'm in my years of single service. So then my brother and I start doing these children's seminars, and I'm like, I don't really love working with children, but I'm really good at it. So we did this stuff. And then it was in Atlanta that Bill saw me in a breakfast room with, there were all these other students, and we're all ATI. You would never be able to actually go in and be a part of the Children's Institute and entrusted with people's children unless you were the entrusted students of the homeschool families.
Right.
So we're all amongst our like kind in our very culty moment, everybody in navy and white, the sea of Mormon looking children in this breakfast room, and Bill walks in, and the whole room just like hushes, because they were just like, oh, it's Bill Gothard. You know, my brother and I are like, oh my God, it's Bill. Mom and Dad aren't going to believe this. Like, we're in the same room as him. You know, and was it like, oh, the Almighty, let's worship him? Sort of, because we'd been brought up since we were 4 and 6 that like he's the Almighty Pope of our stuff. You know, and we see him like when we go to seminars, he's like the man on stage. It's like this tall, you know, so it's like he's in the same room. And I had already met him once when I was at Excel. He comes down to all of the graduations when all these different programs have graduations. He shows up, takes pictures, hands certificates, and on his way.
That's actually impressive. That's impressive.
But you know,
but also
I think he has ADHD a little bit, maybe, because it felt like he never stopped ever. He was just like, go, 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 go,
or,
go. And
he may have just been on drugs.
Maybe.
I mean, I'm just saying, if I found out that Bill Gothard bumped cocaine, I wouldn't be shocked.
I wouldn't either.
Because he didn't do anything else he preached, so.
Right. I think he was hocked up on a lot of sugar, actually. I witnessed that a lot, but he didn't drink coffee either, which was very interesting. But anywho's, so like we're all mesmerized by this. He's in like, oh, it's our supreme leader, Bill Gothard. And he sits down and he gets breakfast with his assistant, and they're sitting at a different table, like maybe 3 round tables over from me. And I start really like, I'm talking to my brother, and we're talking to a couple of the people that we're getting to know friendly, because it's the very beginning of the week. So we're getting to, you know, acclimate with everyone. And I keep looking up at like, oh, where he is. And he's just like staring at me. Like, he's not like looking around the room like, oh, look at all these amazing, you know, students. You know, he was just like, and he just kept looking. And I was like, you know, trying to like inconspicuously be like, is my collar flipped weird? Is my hair not curly enough? I need to get bigger to God. You know, like what am I
just
doing?
Lay on the ground, it might walk away.
You might believe it. You know I'm here. And I kind of looked at my brother and I was like, I feel like he's looking over here. And he looked up and he's like, oh yeah, he is. And I was like, is he looked away yet? And he's like, no. And I was like, okay. So then a few minutes later, he gets up and he walks over to me. And he tells me that he's like, well, what's your name? I was like, my name's Lindsey. Hi. And he was like, well, I would love to meet you in my office this afternoon, or, you know, like, or come over to the office or something like that. And I was like, okay. And we were having like a little field trip too. They had like a satellite office in Atlanta. So we all did like a little field trip of like, oh, it's the office. And I remember like, again, saying hi to him. He recognized me, obviously, I guess, because he asked me to come. But I'm like, okay, I'm here. And, you know, he's like, well, meet me after the seminar down by the stage. And it was a huge auditorium, kind of like a basketball stadium auditorium. And I was like, okay, yes, sir, absolutely. Because why would I question it? Like, that's what an honor, right? I know nothing about him. And so I tell my brother, and he's like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Like, that's incredible. So we were like giddy about it. And after the seminar, my brother goes back to the hotel. I walk through this huge arena and I go to the front, and his assistant sees me and is like, all right, yeah, I just, you know, was coming to get you. And I'm like, okay. So we walk out and we get in his like crazy van and we drive over, and there's like a dinner, some Christian, you know, women from the ministry, I guess. I don't really remember them, but he's like, well, you can go and help in the kitchen. And I'm like, what? So like I go and I just like help the ladies, like it's a Wednesday night supper, and I'm in there like just helping them with make the food. And then we set the table, come out, and I go to sit down, and he like rushes over to my chair and pulls it out for me. And I'm like, oh, okay. I've always hated this. Like this whole like 1800s woman thing, you know, where it's like, lady can't do nothing, can't hold handle.
Chivalry.
Door, help me, I am weak to move chair and sit down. It even as like a 14-year-old, I would get incensed when I would have to wait by the car and have my dad open the van door or my brothers. It was like, I just was so weak. And I'm like really willful independent spirit.
But
so
see,
like,
that's why you're going to hell.
Yeah, because I touched a door.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like
true. That's why I wasn't a strong enough Christian. That's why God wasn't giving me my $500.
Like, don't be mad at us. Be mad at
you know, we've already figured out how to reduce 2 miles off of that 4-mile radius, man.
That's what
Crying and handles. Yeah.
Yep. Just stop opening doors, man.
Fuck. So he like I don't know what's happening, and I go to sit down, and so I literally just sit down, and he bends over my shoulder into my ear, and he's like, you're supposed to bounce. And I'm like, what? So I like kind of like try to steal my thighs, and I kind of just like lift up, and he shoves the chair into the table, and I was like, whoa.
Whoa.
Pulled up to the table, and I was like, well, that was an experience. File that away in always bounce if Bill Gothard's anywhere near your chair. But I was like, that was so extreme. We eat dinner, and then he's like, well, Lindsey, come into my office. And I'm the only student there. Everyone else is grown-ups. So I'm 18 at this point.
Is like watching this happen.
Yeah. No one's and look, I don't profess to know what any of them were doing, but it doesn't seem like anyone was like, why is this 18-year-old without her parents here with you, sir? In your late 50s.
Yes.
Maybe early 60s at that point. I haven't done the math. But
not hard to ask.
What are you doing? What are you doing with her? Huh? But no, I'm like, Bill, I will, like, whatever you need, sir. Like, I didn't know what he wanted me for. Do you know what I mean? Like, I had no clue. So we go into this office, and it's like, it's dark. It's, you know, lots of dark wood, and he loves red carpet. It's everywhere. His assistant's over in a corner with those big old computers, you know, like 22-inch gateways, and just like ginormous, taking up the table. And Bill sits me down across from his big ass desk, and he's in his leather chair all leaned back, and he's like, well, Lindsey, tell me your story. And I'm just like, I don't have any story. I'm like, where do I wish he'd ask me now, but I'm like, where do I begin? You know? And he was like, well, what birth order are you? And I'm like, I'm firstborn. And he was like, what's your spiritual gift? And I was like, well, I'm a mercy. And these are all his things. He teaches about spiritual gifts. He teaches about birth order and like kind of the importance of how behaviorally you act as, you know, whatever order you're in and your gender. And so I'm like, kind of feeling proud of it. And then he's like, well, how long have you been in ATI? And I was like, oh, since 1986. And he's like, wow. And I'm like, it's been at least 10 years. Might be going into 12 at this point. So I was like, yeah, we were a third-year family, meaning we adopted into it. It had only been going on for 3 years. In the third year, my parents were like, yeah, this is what we're doing. So to him also, I think he realizes, you know, he's getting his measure on me of what do I know? How long have I been in this? Do I, you know, have any push or shove? And then he asked me, he's like, do you have any young men back at home? And I was like, my brothers, you know, and he was like, well, men that might be interested in courtship or anything like that. And I was like, well, actually, there is this guy, you know, when I was 17, he's 35, and he's been interested in courting me. But my dad has kind of said no for now, but maybe in the process of like when I'm 18 or 19, he may approve me to enter into courtship with this guy. And he's like, are you a virgin? And I was just like, what? Like, first of all, I didn't know how to be like, how dare you ask me that? My dad, I don't think my dad ever used that word with me. My mom maybe did once, but I just knew that my purity was a thing, and you just don't have sex, whatever that is, until you're married. So for him to just like in the room with this other guy, I remember looking at the assistant because he's probably in his early 20s.
Oh, the assistant was a man.
He's in there. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
No, I was hoping it was a woman.
Nope, it was a dude. I think at that point, like the 70s and 80s and all of those other allegations and stuff where he was like trying to make moves on his secretaries, the board was finally like, enough, like you get to have guys.
Right.
Which clearly they knew that he had a problem. But
Yeah.
I remember like flashing over, like, did he hear him say virgin? And then like, I mean, I'm going to answer truthfully and proudly, like, oh yes, sir, absolutely. But I was like, what a weird thing to ask. And then he was like, well, you're going to need to release the heart of this young man. And I was like, what? I didn't ask for this. Like,
yes, you did.
Interested in marrying me. How have I captured his heart?
Yeah, because that's how that works. It's all your fault. Dude. I'm sure at some point he saw an ankle and it was over. He's been
those ankles and those clavicles, man. Who cares about what's in between?
Telling you, I don't make the rules.
You just go for literally like bones, bony ankles and clumpy clavicles. So he asked that, and I was like, oh my gosh, but yes, of course I am. Really, you need to release this man. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, you're probably right. And he's like, yeah, maybe by the end of the week we could work on you doing that. And I was like, okay. And then I don't really remember what else transpired. And then, we went back to the hotel. And kind of long story short, through the week, I went and I saw him every single night that week. He requested that I come back the next night, and I come back the next night. And so every single evening I was in his office, I was having dinner, I was bouncing and getting pushed in, and then I was going, and I was like, sometimes I would just sit. I would sit and I would listen to him dictate letters to his assistant. Like, I don't know, did he need an audience of one to feel powerful? Like, let her see me doing my ministry man things. I don't know, but I'm like, I'm bored.
The bouncing, really?
Mm-hmm. It was conditioning. When I look back at it, I'm like, I was getting conditioned into a space where I felt like, here is what happens, and here is this man, and it seems safe, and lulled into a false sense of security. But towards like the middle, like Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday, where he was like, Lindsey, I always say this on podcasts, I can't talk like him without talking like him. Like, he has this weird cadence, like, well, Lindsey, he's like, you know, what do you think about coming up to headquarters? And I was like, I mean, that would be amazing, because those people from headquarters were like what the Duggars were for you.
Yes.
Any of the staff from headquarters, they were at the big seminars that we had for the homeschooling seminars, and they would get up and perform musical numbers and play piano and play handbells and be in their own choirs. And it was all this like visual, musical, like artistic stuff. And I'm like, oh, if only I could just have the opportunity to be you guys. Like, you're so cool. Because I don't know what cool really is at that point, clearly.
Right.
But I was like, that's the only thing I have to like idolize and emulate. And so he's like, hey, what do you think about coming to headquarters? And I'm like, seriously? Like, does he really see the work of God in me? Like, am I maybe finally, right? But I'm like, have I maybe finally like broken through this threshold of where like I could actually be of ministry to people, where I have felt like I'm just constantly regurgitating Bill shit. I'm like, maybe this is something, but I'm just an effervescent, desirous teen to like do something more than the crap at home. So he's like, well, I'll call your parents. Yeah, it's terrifying. It's terrible. It's really low.
Yes, because you're just so excited, and like, like it's like watching you in real time get like exploited.
Yes. Yeah. So he was like, well, I'll call your parents. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, maybe they would let me come up, after Christmas or something, because this was in the fall, after Christmas or something. And he's like, well, I was thinking, there's a counseling seminar, which is another, box to tick if you want to work at headquarters. And so he's like, there's a counseling seminar next week in Indianapolis, and I think you should attend that and then go straight up to headquarters. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. It was like a 2-week course. And I'm like, hey, whatever you want, man, because my dad back home just wants me to sit in a closet and do nothing for my whole life. And I'm real bored. So yes, please give me adventures. I want adventures. And so he picked up the phone. Or no, he did not pick up the phone that night. He basically said to me, he's like, if you want to be able to do this, I need you to call and release that young man. And again, I was kind of like, but I was a little defiant, because I was like, but I'm not the one, like, I'm not even sure if he's the one. but he's been interested for over a year. And he's like, yes, but you captured his heart. You need to be the one that releases and ends the relationship. There's no relationship here, dude.
That's insane.
Like, yes, the guy's been in my orbit, and yes, he's been to my house, and yes, we've played games together, and yes, he was the youth minister kind of person, but like, I don't like, are you kidding me? Wow, it just hit me that he was the youth pastor.
I was just going to say, did I miss that part? That's weird.
I think I've actually missed that part my whole life till just now.
Like that, I definitely noticed when you said that.
All of a sudden I was like, wait, check. Have I already said? I don't think I've ever said it like that, because I just have seen it from a different kind of lens before. But yeah, okay, well, youth pastor.
And I love how it's like, stop being groomed by this man so that I can decide.
Take over.
Right, exactly. So that I can pick your groomer. Thank you.
Oh, it's so bad. So I was like, okay, I will do it tomorrow, And so I did. He gave me a phone in the office. It was late at night. And I kind of was like, I'm just going to like do it over here in the corner, and I'm going to try to talk low because I don't want Bill hearing me or this guy hearing me. And I did. I called him up and I was just like, hi, so-and-so. Like, he's like, oh, how's it going? Because he didn't really totally love IBLP and ATI, but my parents were kind of like force feeding him. Like, if you want to be involved with her, like, you have to do all this ministry stuff or like get involved in all of the materials and information. And I was like, yeah, Atlanta's going really great. And he's like, okay, that's good. And I was like, yeah, so I'm just calling because I really need to like release your heart. And he's like, what? I was like, well, I just feel like I've led you down a path of like misunderstanding, that there would be a future relationship between us. I'm 18, by the way, with a maturity level of probably 14 when it comes to relationships. Let's be real.
And he's like in his 30s?
Yeah, he's in his 30s. And I was just like, and so like, I just, I've been given this like amazing opportunity to go and serve the Lord up at headquarters. And I just really think that that's where God is leading me. And I'm really sorry if this hurts you kind of vibe. And so I remember being so out of breath, not just what am I doing? But he's like, okay, are you sure you're good? And I was like, yeah, no, I really know that this is where the Lord's leading. And I just really appreciate, if you just accept that I'm releasing your heart. I didn't know other words because that's all Bill said to me was, you
didn't know what you were doing.
Release him. I'm like, I'm breaking up with someone I didn't even have a relationship with, but he was actively doing a lot of stuff that my dad was putting him through to work towards being of optimalness.
But he was also like a predator, youth pastor.
No, absolutely, 100%. But like, you know what I'm saying? Guy. Like, yeah. I don't. All I know is like he's invested all of this time towards getting the opportunity to even allow me to consider like, are you the future? And now I'm like somehow telling him, right? But now I'm somehow telling him, sorry, I captured your heart. Like I was so like I don't.
He's literally involved in a transaction with your father to prepare you to be his wife whenever you're ripe enough, whenever your dad finds that out, whenever he figures out when that is.
Yeah.
And then another groomer is like,
kick you to the curb. I'll take you. Yeah. He also asked me, I don't remember how we got on the conversation, but he was, because at this point I'm like verbal vomit, I'm just like, wow, what is there to not share with you, sir? I mean, you're the almighty Bill Gothard. He asked me at one point about my parents and how did they become Christians or something like that. And I remember telling him like, well, my dad's not my real dad. He's my adopted father. And he really perked up and he was like, oh, so you are a bastard. And I was like, no one has ever used that word with me before, but I have read the Bible front to back many, many times, and it is used, so I know what it means, but what? And he was like, God is the father to the fatherless and, father to the, so, you are considered in the eyes of God fatherless. And I was like, but my birth father is still alive, though I have no contact with him. And I felt defensive because I'm like, I do have an adopted father, though he's abusive, but I have like, in the structure of umbrella-ness, I have the authority here. But he was like, I will be that father figure. And he took it on right there. So my parents, when he called, well, I'd love Lindsey to come to headquarters. And they're like, oh my gosh, Mr. Gothard, absolutely. Like, I did not think that was going to be their response. I thought they were going to be like, nope, she needs to come back home. We need her to go through the virtue journal and the knowledge journal, and we need her to do all these other things. But they just like were putty in his hand, like, oh, absolutely. Well, when would you want this to happen? And he's like, well, I'm just going to send her directly to the Indianapolis Training Center. And I'm like, I have like a week's worth of clothes, and I'm going to be gone for 2 to 3 weeks, and then I'm going to get to headquarters. And I'm like, I don't understand this.
I just want to take a moment to like sit in this energy where every adult in your life has failed you. Like hard. Like, you know, it's bad when we're feeling bad for the teen like leadership
youth minister,
because he's the least bad character in this story. Like, what the?
He's an odd, predatory, but also victim-ish.
Yeah, he's like, oh, like I'm heartbroken over an 18-year-old, but I'm heartbroken, and she wasn't 18 when I started this whole thing.
Yeah, I was 17.
Like, I'm just trying to like wrap my brain, and like this is not the first time I've heard of IBLP, and I'm still just trying to like wrap my brain around like what my stepdad would do if first a 30-year-old man showed up to the house and I was a teenager and was like, hey, you got some good product on this farm.
I really like that prime USD you got going on over there.
That the body would never be found. That man would never be found. And then if the head of the church called and was like, hey, I want your young daughter to come spend the summer with me doing whatever. Not gonna tell you because I don't have to. Like,
and also we don't know what she's gonna do.
Yeah.
I would love for her to come to headquarters and work there.
I would love for her to no longer be monitored by her parents, which apparently we can't trust them to do anyway, so it's probably a good thing, to be honest with you. But like, that's the thing, is like, I hope that I never become desensitized to the, for lack of a better term, absolute fuckery that is going on in the name of God, in the name of Jesus, in the name of the Bible, in the name of worship, in the name of heaven. And the whole time, you are being blamed.
Yeah.
And not only are you being blamed, but you're being made to do the legwork. Like, the least the man could have done is made the phone call himself, right? Like,
or my dad call him. Bill should have been like, hi, Lindsey's dad.
Right.
So I hear that there is a predatory 35-year-old who's been wanting to court her since she was 17. I think you need to deal with that. And I think you need to cut that off and not consider it. And I'm going to not that it's any better, but I'm going to have her come to headquarters.
Right.
You know, but like, why in the world did it fall on me as a young, inexperienced, naive, and innocent teenager to go and release a 35-year-old man because I captured his heart? And I did not have capture the flag that weekend. He decided, I think I want that one.
Right. And also, maybe you know what he's been up to since then, this old dude, this 35-year-old, but I hope that was a wake-up call for him when he was
not
on
get
the
married
phone
for decades.
Like, I really hope that did he marry somebody his own age?
I don't know her age, but he became a missionary to the Philippines.
Oh, well, that's a nightmare. That's a
but
nightmare.
It was the one thing about him that had me hesitant towards the, maybe this could be the one, because he was nice. He was funny. He was fun. But I'm also a teenager.
The bar is in hell.
Yeah, I know. But I was a teenager. But then he was like, he wanted to become a missionary. And here's where like the mind fuckery of my life and the indoctrination and conditioning comes in, because I didn't know myself enough to be like, I genuinely want to go and witness to the world for Jesus. I didn't understand that it was, I want to go see the world.
I just want to go.
For someone who wanted to be a missionary, I'm like, and he's always wanted to go to the Philippines. So when I saw like years and years and years later that he actually went, I was like, it's just interesting. Like he kept his focus. Again, I'm not trying to defend him, but I'm like, well, you ended up there. But I'm still just like, I could have been fully trapped into that situation as an undeveloped human being and then been trapped in the mother effing Philippines with tons of kids teaching them the IBLP and ATI materials. When I saw the picture of him and his wife, they don't have kids. I think probably because he's pretty old now. But I was just like, wow. Like I could kind of like paste myself into the picture, you know, right. And I'm like, it would have been me and 10 other kids.
You would have been the Duggars. You would have.
Oh,
you would have had a family just like that.
Like, I'm gonna go hard, you know, like do it to the most.
Like, yeah, and so that's just like, you know, I know that whenever I know when there's like shared trauma, it's easy to like laugh about stuff like that. But I just want to honor for a second, like how you never had a chance.
No,
you never had a chance. Like if things had gone the way that every adult in your life wanted it to go for you, gross. Well,
it's hilarious that you say that, because when I was on Preacher Boys podcast with Eric and we were talking a little bit about this, he was like, honestly, you would have ended up on a documentary either way.
Yeah.
And I was like, I died. I was like, you're kind of not wrong. Like,
yes.
And we're definitely digging a lot deeper than he and I did. But like, I mean, it's so true.
That's a great way to put it.
Of nowhere to go of my own desire.
And like being convinced that you just weren't getting it. Everybody else was getting it. You just weren't getting it. Just call that man and release his heart. Don't worry about why. Don't worry about how. You're just not getting it. It's like, it's that whole dichotomy that we always run into as women, as you're too young to know anything. You're a baby. You're a child. But also you are sexualized as a woman. Like mentally, emotionally, you're a child. Stop trying to understand things.
For your pregnancies because it's your fault.
Yeah, like if you have opinions, grow up. You're a child. You don't know anything. You like if you're confused.
And you can't speak anyway because you're a woman.
Right. And then if you are like developed in any way, or if you attract attention in any way, it's like, wow, you should have known better. You are a full-grown woman. It's like,
yeah.
Well, fuck me then, I guess.
Sorry for existing.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And so like at
Zoomed
what
up
point did this, like at what point did you, for lack of a better term, what woke you up?
Yeah, and that's totally perfectly fine, because I, like I said, I was impostoring. Like I knew I wasn't like onboarded with this. Like I wasn't fully like, this is the calling of God. I was like, is this what God wants? Because I still haven't heard him yet. But I would like to, like, my life at that point in time was built, all of my decisions were built on what is the lesser of the two evils. And every choice led me to like, well, this isn't as bad as that. Well, I'm going to do this because it's not as bad as that. And then that's not as bad as that. So it was survival. It was this ping pong effect of just trying to survive everything and navigate myself to like the least traumatic part, or like, what could I avoid to not feel hurt or dismissed or whatever. And so when I finally got up to headquarters, and there were 3 other girls, by the way, that he plucked out of that seminar. So we all drove up. I was 18. One of them was 16. Her sister was 12. And then the oldest was 23. And she's the one that drove the car. And we went up to the counseling seminar. I roomed together with the 2 young sisters. And then we all went up to headquarters. And Bill wasn't there when we got there. He was, ping ponging around the country doing his thing. But when he finally did come to headquarters, I was placed in a spot in one of the women's homes, because there were all these, he owns a lot of property around his headquarters. And with that property, it's like a bunch of houses in a neighborhood. So he just kind of like took over the area. And so I was placed in one of the girls, like the women's, like an actual house. And he called me up to his office and he's like, so how's it going? How are you liking headquarters? Da, 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 da. And at that point I was just working in the kitchen, because they did that. And I learned later, they did this with all of the broken birds that Bill would bring back to headquarters. That's what I called them.
What the hell is a broken bird?
I'm a broken bird, girl. I did not check off all the boxes of having enough behind me to be there in a legitimate way. Bill plucked me out of a seminar because he liked who he saw, because I was fundamentally a broken kid. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't have my birth father in my life. I have this guy who's trying to court me. I've got, all this trouble at home. There's a lot of stuff that I can't discuss on the podcast, but like there was a lot of other stuff going in my home that was like, he just thrived on like, oh, you're like this broken little bird, and I'm going to bring you back to headquarters, and I'm going to rehabilitate you, and I'm going to help you, and I'm going to be your father. Meanwhile, headquarters is like a corporate place. Like the entire corporate functioning of this ministry is what's going on there. I had no fucking business being there. So I'm like, I show up because he wants me there, but everyone's like, oh, hi. Like it's like we all four showed up and no one knew what to do with us. And so it's like, well, okay, we have there's a room over there available, and then there's a room at this house, and you two sisters can go over to this apartment complex, and then you guys can work in the kitchen. And so we're just like doing grunt work in the kitchen for a week or so. Then Bill rolls in like, well, Lindsey, blah, blah, blah. And what do you think you would like to do here? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't office. I play the piano, cute and cuddly. I sew and I make cookies. What else am I supposed to be doing? I also teach children. Do you have any of them here? Because I can do that. Yeah. So I ended up getting put in the, it's called the information department, but it was basically the homeschooling department, the ATI department. And I was in the information center. I guess it was the ATI department. So this whole wing of the production center, like basically oversaw all of the homeschooling families. And I get introduced to my supervisor, who was another student in their 20s. And so she's like, oh, well, can you do this? Can you do that? Nope, 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 nope. Can you type? Nope. Well, let's put you on a computer and teach you how to type. So I literally sat down and I did Mavis or whatever it was, but just like, I'm going to learn how to type. And I play the piano. I'm very visual. So that was easy. I flew through that. They're like, okay, well, you can start typing things up. Right. So I'm just like copying stuff that people are writing, like a little secretary or whatever. And eventually I just like work my way in, and I'm like, oh, I know how to work in an office now. And I got put in charge of some of like the data entry for finances. People would send in their yearly checks for the ministry and and then I would help with reporting and stuff. And then I moved up to like supervisor assistant because I'm a go-getter. And the next thing I knew, I was counseling mothers that were raising their children in the ATI program. I have pictures of this with my Bible spread out on my desk, so that whenever a heartbroken, feeling like failure mom would call in and get sent to the information center, I could pick it up and be that bright, bushy-eyed student that they knew from seeing us at the seminars. We were their call for help. And so they were just like, I don't know, my child's just like really disobeying right now. And I just can't get Timmy to sit still. And it just feels like he's just really not, like, I'm worried about his spirit. It just seems like he's so rebellious. And I'm sitting here thinking, first of all, I've been disciplined like beyond all reason. I am not going to advocate for that.
Right.
So I was just like, well, the Bible does say, and I'd like flip to a tab and I'd be like, love your children or something like that, like speak in love and grace or compassion or whatever. And I'm like, maybe your child just needs to have a little bit of one-on-one time with you to like realize that, I'm in a weird way, I'm like trying to therapy these people instead of give them just like God and Bill Gothard's principles. Cause he's like, well, go spank your child, and so it was very weird because I was fighting what I knew I should be telling them and what I wanted to say to them. And thankfully, no one was ever like overhearing what I was saying or course correct me on it. But I kind of always felt like at some point someone's going to figure out that I'm not like giving them the information with the materials that should be.
Thankfully, nobody ever heard you giving them like solid, usable advice as opposed to like bullshit from Bill Gothard's book that's probably going to do more mental harm than good.
Well, I'm thinking to myself, like, who am I to be telling you what to do with your kid? Like, I don't have kids. Like, I'm Bill Gothard. I don't have children. Why am I sitting here? I am still a child. I'm 18, 19 years old. I'm not fully developed, and I have been neglected in so many different ways. Why in the hell? Why? So the wool kind of started to really melt off my eyes. Like, I don't even know how you want to say it. Like, it wasn't like one day the, you know, scabs were ripped off and I saw everything for what it was. It was just this like slow journey into what the fuckery is this. And it really began when Bill started doing prayer time with me. And he wanted to, because of all of the turmoil going on in my family. Like that was his in kind of getting me, you know.
You mean kind of like how studies show that abused children get re-abused and offenders re-offend. Yeah.
That's the thing that tracks. Yeah. And he was just like, come up to the office and let's, you know, he would just say like, let's like come up to the office. And I'm like, oh, okay. So after work, I'm working a, you know, 8-hour day. I go have dinner and then I wander up to his office, and he's always in his office when he's, you know, not on the road. So I go up there and I sit at his office that very first time with my Bible and my notebook, and I'm ready to pray or I'm not ready to pray, but I'm just like, okay, well, I'm ready to be of service. You know, whatever he needs, cool, I'm here. Like maybe I'll get to type something up because I know how to type now, and that's pretty awesome. And I just literally watched him like I did when I was in Atlanta. I watched him just like dictating letters and newsletters and things like that, and letters to families that are writing him, you know, with like all this duress and everything is so dramatically falling apart, and, you know, dear Mr. Bill Gothard, please help our family, we don't know what to do. And it just felt like he just needed like a cute little wide-eyed spectator.
It's a control thing,
what he was doing. And I'm just like, oh my gosh,
sit there as long as I want you to sit there. That's all it's about. Like,
I'm like, I'm ready to go home. I'm tired. I have to get up really early because they do like a staff meeting every morning, which is sort of like church. You know, you're just like, you come in and you sing some hymns, and then you quote some scripture, and then somebody gives all the morning announcements, and and then you go about your day. And I was like, I'm so tired. But then go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, do you think Bill Gothard actually believed in God, or do you think he was just a businessman? I've always thought he never actually believed in God.
I think that he used God as his grift.
Yeah. Like, I know that there are some grifters who like believe in God, but they also
like a blurred line of it.
Yeah, but like, for example, I have like a theory that Joel Osteen is like not a Christian. And like, I don't think Bill Gothard
he doesn't act like one. He doesn't act like one.
Certainly not.
But he'll sure spout it from his pulpit.
Yeah. But I've always wondered if like Bill Gothard was never actually religious at all. He just saw the business opportunity and like the ability to manipulate people in a much easier, much cheaper, much faster way by involving God.
Yeah. I think it's fair to have that opinion, you know. Yeah. I think it's a fair opinion. And if you had asked me this 3 years ago, I would have said absolutely he believes in God. Absolutely he does. I do think that he had a fervor for the Bible, for God, and he took advantage of that.
Right.
And knew that he had a very primed space in which he could thrive. And he went to school, you know, he was in the same school with Billy Graham. He's watching all of the, I mean, it's in the 80s, he's watching all of these other huge televangelists and, you know, evangelists just setting America on fire for God. So I think that there was also maybe this like, you know, kind of like little engine burning in him where he's like, well, I really need to up my ante with my ministry. And you've got James Dobson over here doing James Dobson things, and Bob Jones is doing their things with their university and PJC or PCC, sorry. You know, there's so much blooming at that point. And so I think for him, he's like, well, I gotta, you know, jump off, you know, the starting line and like really start pushing hard, which he did. But I think, you know, whether or not it was genuine in the beginning, it definitely went south, you know, very quickly.
I've always thought that people like Jim Jones and like Bill Gothard genuinely start out Christian, and then they start to deconstruct at a certain age, just like so many of the rest of us.
Right.
But they also see the financial benefits of just pretending like they haven't. So I don't think it comes from a place of never having believed. I think they just deconstruct the same way everybody else does, but they're like, if I don't tell anyone, they'll keep
no one's
tithing.
Gonna know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if I don't tell anyone, I can still invite 18-year-old girls to my freaking office.
And hey, if no one keeps saying it, you know, or if I keep like starting another ministry and it just continues to be successful, is the board just happy that money keeps coming in? And the rest of this, like, well, you know, we'll just kind of deal with it as we deal with it. But again, I'm not in his head, so I don't know. But I do feel like, again, my lens is through Bill Gothard's materials.
Right.
So I'm still kind of like, I don't know. It kind of stumbles me because I'm like, or I stutter over it because I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it would be, I don't even know what's worse. Do you know what I mean? Like, I believe in God and I'm going to continue on this path, and I'm going to continue regardless of the people that I hurt and damage and utilize and abuse and take advantage of. Or if you're like, you know what, I'm going to let people continue to think that I'm, you know, of godliness because I really like all of the opportunity that I have right now to take advantage of everybody.
Right. Like,
they're
which
both
grift
terrible.
is worse? It's, I don't know. I don't
so
have
really,
an answer for that one.
It doesn't matter, right? It's still a lot of bad is happening regardless of his faith or not. I do think that his sister, she was his secretary at headquarters. She sat like outside his office. You know, I do think that people in his family group were definitely Christian.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like they believed it. But as far as him, I think he was never personal with people. Like he's personable, but he never revealed a lot of his own self.
He's an actor.
Yeah, it was always his, you know, revelations from God and the things that God showed him when he was fasting, or the stuff that this ministry they're going to start because he met this wide-eyed person who, you know, is so good with medical stuff, and it just really moved him that we need a biblical medical blah 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 blah. You know, he just never stopped grifting.
Dude, that's
I
mean, like I just want to tell you, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever told you that, but I'm just so sorry. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, I'm just really sorry. I don't, like, just sitting here, just listening to this, and it's just like, it's messed up, and like, everybody failed you, and you literally could not stand a chance. And when the impact emotionally and physically and mentally started to impact you the way that it should have, you were blamed. Right. And I'm just sorry, man. Like,
I love you. It's, you know, I appreciate it and I accept that. I know that there's nothing else I could have done. Through a lot of therapy, I realized, you know, because of course I don't know. I never wanted to have that feeling of like, oh, I feel so guilty I didn't do X, Y, Z. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I can't feel guilty. I never really did regarding like my upbringing and why didn't I leave sooner and why didn't I call CPS or why didn't I go to the police or why didn't I talk to somebody else about what was going on? I was conditioned and controlled into believing the things that in order to survive my life. And I was told there was no other way out or really bad things would happen. And I'm like, well, this is bad. I can't imagine badder, you know, can't imagine it being worse.
And like, God forbid you became the victim of exactly what they set it up to do to you. You know what I'm saying? Like
I know.
Like, blame the mouse for falling into the glue trap, I guess. Like, how dare you?
Cheese, like, man, I was hungry.
But like y'all put out the. I'm confused. Like,
yeah, you put the cheese there with the glue. What do you think I'm gonna do? I don't understand glue. I understand cheese.
Right,
it's so true.
They're literally saying, follow these rules, and you do, and they're like, why are you such a mess?
Well, and they're like, I always say this, the goalpost moved constantly. It wasn't a fixed set of rules that always made sense. Okay, have purity and dress, you know, modestly. Okay, fine. I know my parameters. Oh, wait, now it's my full ankle. Oh, wait, now it's a peep-toed shoe. Oh, even I have very long toes. Not that anyone really needs to know this. But when I wear, you know, like the dress shoes you get from Payless, like you can see like the crack of my toe from my big toe and
toe cleavage.
My second toe. Yeah. So then like I had to have different kind of, or they had to wear pantyhose, you know, I had to like cover up the thing. And I'm like, who is staring in the crack between my toes going, I am so defrauded by this person. Like, what is wrong? You know why? Because there's nothing else for you to look at.
Right. And also, do they know that there's like entire communities online that'll accept them for who they are. Like these toe crack horny people.
That you can just go find a community that embraces it. Yeah, exactly.
Just go.
Well, now they probably do, but I mean, Bill was a very big footsier. He footsied all the time. Oh yeah, the level of footsie town, the level of footsie games just like makes me ill. Oh yeah, he would have me come and sit at the head table. We had a dining hall, so he would have me come and sit at the big long banquet table in the front whenever there were delegations or certain like the mayors of some city or state or whatever, or like these just different delegations from all over the place would come in, and he would be like, well, Lindsey, come up and sit at the head table with us. And I'm just like, ugh. So I would be placed across from him, mixed in with all these other dudes, in suits and stuff. And there would be a couple of my other, broken bird friends that would be scattered about us. And all of a sudden I would just feel his foot, like his shoed foot with mine, like kind of clunk, 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 clunk. And I'm so sensitive to that stuff. And I'm like, stop it. And I'm like, people are going to see the carpet is red. We are wearing dark shoes and I'm wearing light pantyhose. Like they are going to see what you are doing. Stop it. And I would like kind of pull my feet back and like curve them around the legs of the chair because I'm like, well, let him footsie the chair, right? And then I'm like, he's a short guy. They kind of make fun that he's like got a Lego head and all this. And he's not like, he might be as tall as me. But it was like all of a sudden his leg would just like telescopically extend like he was Inspector Gadget. And all of a sudden I'm like, how is your foot over here? Like you are so intense.
I did not think I could learn anything that would disturb me more than I was already disturbed about Bill Gothard. I'm going to have nightmares. I'm going to be honest with you.
He did it in the vans. He did it in the vans as well. I know Laura talks about it on the documentary, but he did it to me constantly because he had these bucket seats that was like captain seats in the back of this really big van. And we called it the Gothard Mobile. And it would have like captain seats that would face each other behind the front seats. So he would get in there, his assistant would be on one side with his computer or laptop or whatever and be like, doing the things or, scribing stuff out. And then there would usually be another girl across from him and me and other girls in the back of the van, his whole like paddy wagon. And we would go down to Indianapolis Training Center for other like things that were going down there or graduations and stuff. And I'm like, I have no purpose in being here. I work at the information center where I'm working with the homeschool families and their files and data entry and things like that. And he would take me away for like a week and we would go down to Indianapolis where I would just be like, toodle, 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 I don't know what to do. And I would get stuck in the kitchen again and I'd be fucking working in the kitchen for a week and then go and see him in the evenings and sit in a chair and just like, ugh. Like I was hating my life. I'm like, I don't see him for a grifter at this point. I'm just like, you are wasting my time.
So
but he would see me in the van and like with his assistant right there and this other girl. And after the documentary, this other girl messaged me because it wasn't the same girl all the time, but she messaged me and she used to work in the kitchen too, of course. And she was like, I specifically remember Bill Gothard inviting you to take off your shoes. I don't remember that. I think I freaking blocked it out of my head. And I remember I was laying in bed with my phone up and it just dropped on my face. And I was like, oh my God, wait, what? Wow. And I was like, because I think I had said to like friends or maybe on another podcast or something where I was like, I do remember him having socked feet at one point where he was like rubbing it on my pantyhosed foot and leg. But I was like, I don't have reference for it, but I think it was in one of the vans. But I was like, I've never known, like, did I kick off my own shoes or whatever? Because I know better when I'm around him. Shoes stay on. And she was like, oh yeah, no, I remember him inviting you to take your shoes off. And I was like, wow.
Has like, I mean, and
great.
And maybe like, I don't know if you're still in contact with them or anything, but like, has your family ever said anything about this? Are they still involved? Like, are they still?
They aren't. No. I mean, like, they still hold, like, if you were to talk to them about all of this, they would defend it. They would defend, but they did not, I never told them what went on at headquarters, the way he prayed with me,
but
the way,
just,
like, the footsie.
You're not going to tell me they didn't know. A grown ass man who
they weren't there, babe.
But
my parents never came up there. My mom came up once for a couple of days, and I never had, like, I didn't have the close interaction with Bill while she was there. Like, I was spending time with her.
I just find it hard to believe that rumors didn't make their way back. Like, so,
My
like
parents
even
didn't, my
rumors.
parents weren't in a big ATI community. Where we were living at the time, we didn't have other ATI families around us. So they're like, they would go to seminars and stuff, but it wasn't the rumor that would, like, it's weird when the Duggars are like, oh yeah, we know the Gothard Girls. Like, everybody's like, the Gothard Girls, ha. Ginger even says in her book, she's like, yeah, we put on a wig at a Halloween kind of costume store. And we're like, look, I'm a Duggar girl. And I was like, I am so deeply offended right now. You are gross. Because that is not something you ever mock or make light of, dude.
Right.
Because that, being a Gothard girl, was a target to be abused by that man.
Yeah, it's like being an altar boy.
Shut down. Yeah, you do not understand, clearly, because you're being so flippant about it. I did get a conversation with my mother many, many years later, like it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where she was informing me of friends she was talking to. And she hadn't seen these people in a really long time. They had been in ATI and raised their kids in it. And she is telling me that when she met them, she's like, yeah, I told them that, you know, I always felt like something happened at headquarters with Lindsey, but I never really knew what it was. And I just didn't really feel like I wanted to know. She's telling me this, that she told them that. And I was like, I'm so glad I was on speakerphone, because I was like, I've taken crazy pills and entered a different time. I'm in a different stratosphere. And my husband was like, what? And I'm like, what? I don't have words. Like, clearly she knew that something was up in my behavior when I came home, but I just didn't think I could handle it. So I didn't ask her. And I was just like, okay, well, I think our relationship is going to be ending at some point in time, because I now realize even more so that I wasn't making big conscious efforts. I don't think, I mean, I can't profess to know every single thing I was thinking at every moment in time at headquarters, but I do feel like I didn't tell them because it would be my fault.
Yes.
He's the head of the ministry. There is a lot of that power dynamic, as we talk about in any relationship, of like a boss and a secretary or whatever, like a boss and an underling. Like, you can't really have those kind of relationships because there's so much coercion that's potentially going on there with the power struggle of things, like that structure. So I'm like, in our dynamic of fundamentalism, if I tell them, Bill's playing footsie with me, guys, and when we pray, he pushes his entire profile of his body up against me when we're kneeling on it by a couch. He just like slunks up and everything gets pressed together, and then he footsies me while we pray. And sometimes he'll nuzzle his head into mine. And that went on for 4 to 6 months when I was at headquarters. And that, like, talk about like me becoming awake to things, that ruined my opinion of him. And so then I'm in a space like I was at home and everything else, where I'm having to imposter myself, because it is still safer to be with creepy man than it is to be at home being abused and neglected at home with no potential for an out, right? Like, 35-year-old guy is still there, you know, but I'm like, what else is there? Because I still don't understand that I have autonomy to walk out the fucking door. But that's the level of conditioning. There was so much fear, and like, I am hindered with educational neglect. I don't understand the world. I've been told a lot of people are bad and want to do bad things to me. And if a Christian guy is stumbling over my ankle bone, imagine what a non-Christian guy is going to do to me. Like, I do not feel safe anywhere in my own Christian community, and I'm terrified of the outside world. So please tell me, what am I supposed to do? So the survival was, don't tell my parents because it will be my fault. They don't need to know. So when I did tell them a couple of years ago through victim impact statements that I read to them and then sent them emails, I've not heard from my mother since.
How long ago was that?
April 22.
Wow.
Haven't heard from her since. I don't anticipate ever hearing from her again, to be quite frank. I had to go through a very deep grieving period and honestly start looking at it as though she had passed. Yeah. Because I don't see myself getting any type of resolution or answers or respect for what I have laid at their feet. I lay responsibility at their feet. And I blame them for absolutely every single thing. Do I blame them for Bill Gothard's behavior towards me? Of course not. Am I open to them saying, wow, we massively fucked up, And we are so sorry. And doing it in a very genuine, authentic way, because don't think at this point, I don't know when they're genuine and authentic. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
the defensiveness and the denial is so common amongst
Yes.
Fundie parents. Like, no, I'm going to
Yes.
defend it because I did what God told me to. Therefore, I did no wrong. I'm being persecuted. We all default back to that, right? Like, my children have gone the way of, they've gone the way of Satan, and they've fallen from grace and from God. And so now that they're so worldly, and I live in these liberal cities of New York and LA, I mean, I'm sure they just think I've been infiltrated by all of the liberal crap. But my father did send me a letter about 3 to 4 months later, and it was deeply lacking. Respectively, knowing that he's not done any work, he hasn't seen a therapist, he hasn't, you know what I mean? But still, not taking ownership, being very just surface about it. And in regards to Bill, because this is the first time, and I told him in detail everything that this man, like the moves that this man would make on me. And he was like, it's really unfortunate when Christian men stumble. Yeah. Not, oh my God, my daughter, I am so sorry. I am righteously livid. I wish I could have protected you. I wish that you had felt you could tell me. Like, nothing. It is so unfortunate when Christian men stumble.
No, it's unfortunate when you put your daughter in the hands of a literal predator. You notice that she's different when she comes back. You have enough wherewithal to think, she's acting like she was the victim of a predator. Not gonna ask her. Dude.
And my mom was sexually assaulted.
So then she should know. Then she should know.
There's a disconnect.
Like, that's the
I
thing.
don't understand it. It drives me insane, Sydney.
Like, then they should know. Then she knew what she was looking at when she saw the changes in your, like, that's the thing, is like,
to say she couldn't handle it, she had her suspicions of what the fuck had been going on. Her instincts were telling her something was going on, but she was shutting them off. And that is what a lot of Christians, period, do. Like you said, when you're talking about younger kids, like being this like pious little moral compass asshole as a 10-year-old to your 35-year-old neighbor, like it infiltrates into you, where you're like, no one can question me. And right. I question nothing. You can't question me, and I don't question either, because what we have been spoon-fed from these people without us really diving into who the hell they are and what their track record is, we fully eat up the bowls that they give to us.
And how did you get out of there?
I got married. My now husband of 24 years, thank you very much.
Wait.
He was at headquarters as well.
You've been married for... Wait, how old were you when you got married?
I was 22.
I thought we were way closer to the same age.
46.
I would never have guessed, because I should have, I'm terrible at math, so
I knew you were, baby.
Yeah, I knew you were older than me, because especially the years you were giving and stuff, but I'm terrible at math. I didn't understand. I really thought we were within 5 years of the same age.
33.
33.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I have heard your stories on how you met him and things like that, but
but get him inserting himself, because when I was at headquarters and we got to know each other, we would talk at night on the phone, and I just started telling him everything. I was for some reason, I just feel like I can trust this person. He was kind. He was
which is shocking, because far nobody in your life is worth trusting ever.
I didn't even trust the girls around me. Even my good friends at headquarters did not know the depth of mess that I was going through in my life. And I did not tell any of them what was going on with me and Bill. Although after the documentary, several of us that were roommates, I was a house mom for about 6 to 8 months living there. It just kind of got thrusted on me. And I was like, I don't really want this responsibility, but here it is. And a lot of us girls in my house were broken birds too. They were brought up to headquarters from Bill, blah, blah, blah. And, one of the girls who actually, I don't think she ended up being a part of the lawsuit against Bill, only because I think she was beyond the statute of limitations, which I was as well. And I also was 18 when I was at headquarters. headquarters. If I'd been 17, it would have been, legally viable for me to go after him. But she and I were messaging quite a bit. And I was like, do you remember? Because I was like, was it 4 to 6 months that Bill was praying with me? Was it like this timing? And so I was like, I just hold to this. And it's not in my journals. Because if anyone found my journals and they knew that I was like having these like situations with Bill, I would be so fucked.
Right.
I was like, do you remember like this space? Because we were roommates together. And she's like, oh, you snuck back into the house at night all the time. And I was like, okay, so I really am not making this up, because we do start to question our own stories.
You gaslight yourself.
You know? Oh yeah, I'm like, well, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe it only happened a couple times. I'm like, no, it was. I swear it was all the time.
You never want it to be the thing. You're never like, you know what would be cool is if I had this weird fucking like sexual assault thing going on with a cult leader. That would be cool. Like, as much
that'd really get me some views online.
Right. Like, as much as people like to think that like our generation is out here just like milking it, being dramatic, doing it for the gram or the TikTok or whatever, like nobody wants that. Like, you're gonna say, no, everybody who was supposed to take care of me didn't utterly fucking fail me. Like, no, the person who was supposed to be my quite literal spiritual leader and like send me messages from God would not have been a fucking creep.
Yeah.
Like, so of course you're gonna
shouldn't be.
Yeah. And unfortunately,
and his level of teaching with purity culture and everything else, and he is just blowing past all those guardrails. It was constant. His hypocrisy of his own teachings just made me so sick. He was so sick. He's such a hypocritical asshole.
He like and like,
yeah. Like, it's a lot, but my husband and I met at headquarters. We got married, and I just was like, please let him be kind for the rest of our lives. Like, please don't because I told him I don't want to have kids for the first 5 years. I have a lot of medical issues, which I know now were due to all of the extreme anxiety and the repression of my own feelings and feeling so trapped, and the hyper anxiety and the hyper awareness and the catastrophizing, like all the things in order to just survive my experience.
Being sexually assaulted by a cult leader messes with you physically. I would not have guessed.
Yeah, and then, the discipline at home from 6 to 16, no big deal. I'm sure that my nervous system is just fine. But I was like, yeah, exactly. I'm over dramatizing it, especially as a Christian woman. Hated that. Everyone was like, you're always so dramatic. And I'm like, no, I'm authentic. I'm telling you what really happened. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you just aren't listening.
Yeah, no, I'm actually traumatized. Thank you.
CPTSD is real, I've learned. But it wasn't like I had this moment of like, it was a massive escape. It was more just like, well, I married the right person. I chose wisely, and more so he chose me. And I was like, okay, let's get out of here because we are best friends and let's go get married. But even that was a trial and tribulation to get to that point. But once we did, I was like, I don't know what life looks like on this side. And I already said, I don't want to have kids for the first 5 years. Let's talk about it in 5 years. We were married in 2000. I'm like, let's talk about it in 2005. He's like, okay, cool with me. And so I went on birth control. And meanwhile, his family's sending me like, tinctures and herbal supplements so that I can get pregnant faster. And, gosh, it's been a year. And even my own mother was like, you guys going to have a kid anytime soon? I'd love to have some grandkids. And I'm like, it's one of the things I absolutely loathe about religious people. And I will say specifically Christians, but I'm sure in a lot of religions that everybody wants big families. You have no right to take me from an absolutely naive space of don't know what sex is, don't be touched by others, do not touch others, which of course, when I'm touched, it's negative touch through discipline with my father, through touching with Bill Gothard. And then all of a sudden I meet the man of my dreams. And now I'm supposed to go and literally fuck like rabbits. There's literally like a barrier to entry on this situation. Like, I need time to understand that I've gone from absolutely guarding everything and shrouding myself and protecting everything about my physicality to, let me just be completely run around the house naked. And and that always turned me off, even not knowing that meant, but it always like,
Yeah.
it soured me out, this idea that like, whenever he wants it, you better be laid down and ready. Like you like, oh my God, I've been controlled my whole life. I don't want someone controlling a part of me that I'm not even really familiar with.
Right.
And I'm not walking into this with like a full level of education, sex education. It's just, all I knew was that if I have sex, I will get a baby.
Yes. And I don't think there's nearly enough conversation either about the trauma alone that goes with your purity is your value. Your purity is your value. Your purity is your value. Your value. Wedding night, you're not pure anymore. You wake up the next day and you have no value. You have no value.
Your value is he purchased you.
Yes. And like that, and they don't
You're not owned.
Yeah. And like they don't talk nearly enough about like, you're not a virgin anymore. Your value is zero.
Yeah.
Zero now. And like, they just expect you to be like,
your value comes in birthing more children.
Yes.
That's how
and
you
like,
become valuable again, is becoming a dugger.
And you have to earn that back with each kid.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you become this matriarch of like 20 kids, and they're like, wow, like her level of godliness, like you got to get into your 50s and 60s, you know, in order to be seen again as like, wow, you have weathered through all of the things and look at how godly you are because you have so many children. Like that, it's so demeaning of what women are capable of being. I said it in the documentary towards the end, where I was like, no one said I could or couldn't do what I do now. They never saw the possibility outside of me being a pregnant, married woman. And so it's bizarre. I have so many goosebumps going all over my body right now, but it's validating to me now. Like your question in the beginning, like, how did you go from New York, LA makeup artist? How did you go from Bill Gothard to that? I mean, 25 years after all of this, the stuff we're talking about with Bill was a 3-year time period. And then the rest of time has been the last 24 years of me stumbling through life. I did not believe that therapy could help, because therapy and psychology is vilified. It's humanistic, it's secular. They're going to do other voodoo things in your brain that are not going to be healthy for you. And even though when I got married, I think I lasted in church maybe another year or two max. And I finally told my husband, I cannot do it. When every time I wake up on a Sunday morning, I want and feel so ill with panic and fear that I have to go back into the church and have all of these women ask me if I'm pregnant yet, or know that they're judging me for my clothes. I was dropping weight so much because that I had IBS. It was absolutely out of control. I was wasting away, and I actually got into modeling. Wow. Because I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I want to go just do something that is something I feel like I possess the ability to do. And that's where the immodesty started. You know, I was wearing like, you know, strapless wedding dresses for little bridal shows in Indiana. And then it's, you know,
I love how the immodesty
comes. Oh my God, look at me, you know,
like,
it's.
I love how that comes with wedding dresses. I was thinking you were going to say like motorcycle photo shoots and like leopard bikinis or something.
Don't worry, like, I got there.
But I mean, like, that's just, oh God. Like,
yeah, I was like, the first time I started doing like lingerie and swimwear, I was like, oh, I like this. Like, I like this a lot, because I've been hiding this under like 20 pounds of clothing. And I don't even think I was aware of what I had underneath here, you know, because I would never look at myself in the mirror. I would never look at my body, or as we were calling it earlier, like I wouldn't look at my shame. I would not pay attention to it. And even now, I mean, I'm a lot better now, but like the last 20 plus years, I get out of the shower and I immediately I lock the door, and I immediately just like, I need to get dressed. And it's not because I don't trust my husband. I just don't trust anything. You know, I don't feel safe. Like, what if the door opens? Like, like, you know, and I'm like, so confused.
These instincts developed while your brain was literally forming. Exactly. Like he could literally be the most openly body positive man on planet Earth, but like while your brain was forming, these building blocks were being just installed in there. So
It programmed on top of what my own instincts and behaviors should have been. It programmed over top of them something else that was that rewired my body in a very different way.
Yeah, and you can spend your entire life never like doing everything you've got to do to deprogram that, and there's just very likely always going to be that little, just the little, and then on top of that,
that there, even though I feel healed and very much more actualized as a human being with a lot of therapy, there are still things that really freak me out. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, am I not done yet? Like, come on. But then I'm like, girl, it's going to live with you forever.
Oh, and then on top of that, you've got just the normal American woman shit you got to deal with. Like, even when you're fully deconstructed, people are like, yeah, but you're expired.
Yeah.
Bros on the internet be like, yeah, but you hit the, what do they call it? You hit the wall or something like that. The red pill term. It's like when you turn 30. Out. Yeah, you hit the wall, man. Or like, yeah, she hit the wall at 60 miles an hour, man. Like,
oh my God.
I swear to God, I spend so much time on subreddits for groups I don't belong to just because I'm fucking fascinated. I'm just like, wow.
I know. Human nature is so wild, isn't it?
Yes.
Just like eat it all up.
Yes. And so it's like, yeah, now I fully deconstructed. And society is telling me I'm too old for a bikini now. Fuck. Like, I finally get to the point where I'm allowed to wear one, and society's like, I'm pretty sure you're
maxed out. You met your time limit.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
In my backyard. Screw 'em.
Yeah. But, man, that's just, like, I've never had such little to say. Because what do you say? Truly, like, what normally I'm like, just question, but like, what do you say? Like, honest to God, the only thing I can think to say is like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm so sorry.
I know. And it is, and like I said before, like, I take it and I receive it and I appreciate it so much. And I know that, like, it wasn't your fault, you don't have to say sorry, but the compassion that I started to receive after the documentary and continuing on podcast to share more of my story, I was overwhelmed because someone saying sorry, I'm like, what are you sorry for? Like, you don't have to go through this. And then I'm like, if I heard someone else saying stuff like this, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Like, that's so uncool and so unfair. And you should have never done that. And I'm like, then I just need to accept that people are seeing it for what it is. Finally, I'm not living in the shadows. I'm not having to suffocate all of this stuff inside my body. Right. And even that, in talking to you and others, has been even a part of my healing journey, because as I expel more of this stuff out, like us literally saying that the guy was a youth pastor, I don't know why on this podcast I said it in that term, but I was like, why did I never connect that before?
When you said it and just kept going, I was like, oh, that's something she's worked through. And then you came back and you're like, wait a second. Like, no.
Wait, what did I just say? Like, yeah.
And I want to clarify, I don't feel sorry for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry for what happened. Like, I don't want people to think I pity you. I actually mad respect. Like, I have mad respect. I think that if anyone had to go through this stuff, I'm glad it's a person like you who knows what to do with that platform. Mm-hmm. I'm glad it's somebody like you who is out here not shutting the fuck up about it. Right? Like, just like being on anything, doing whatever you've got to do to get the word out there unapologetically. Like, I'm glad it's you. I'm so sorry that it happened. But if it had to happen to anyone, I'm glad it's the person who can take the things that you can't undo, they're done, and just really use them for, like, to help people, right? Mm-hmm. And to put the message out there. And, maybe somebody's listening to this who wasn't a member of IBLP, but they were told their whole life that their sexual assault was their fault.
Yes.
And they were beaten by their stepdad, and they were told by religious leaders that they were gross and they needed to cover up and they should be ashamed, and their only value is in their virginity. And once you're not a virgin anymore, you don't have any value until you're doing something else, like popping out kids. Like, even like sadly, that part of the story is not a unique one,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately.
Correct.
The for every story I hear, 50% of it is batshit bananas crazy shit that I never thought I'd hear in my life. And the other half of it is, oh my God, you too.
Mm-hmm.
Like another one, you know?
Yeah.
And so thank you for sitting with people like me and sitting with people like the documentary and the people that I've been watching you on like Instagram and other podcasts and on YouTube, and not being quiet about it, like taking something that I recognize must be just so like you, I feel like it's like it strips you naked every time, you know.
Yeah.
But you do it, and you hashtag to make sure people find it, and you share it, and you know, I was about to say reblog because I'm old. And you put it on your Tumblr and your Zanga.
WordPress.
Yeah. You WordPress the shit out of that motherfucker. Yeah, but like, if somebody was listening to this hoping that I would have some insightful thing to say, that's not what they're going to get today, because I don't know. Like, where do we, as people, like, where do we even go from here? Because this is still happening. You know, you're not telling me a story from 1932. You're telling me a story of, the man is still alive, unfortunately.
He is.
I was very upset to learn he was still among the living.
I kind of am glad that he is, because I needed him to see the documentary. Whether or not he's actually seen it, I don't know. But
you know, he has.
It's about him.
You
Come
know,
on, your ego's too big, bruh. You watched it.
Like,
you can't
it's
not.
Like, right. It's like how Maddie, what's his face, is out here being like, I haven't heard Torture's Poe Department. I don't know what that album is. It's like, yes, you fucking do. You heard it was shitting all over you, and you watched it. Bill Gothard has
to it.
Yes, like Bill Gothard has watched that documentary, and I hope, and if you're listening to this, which you're not, but if you are Bill Gothard, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself. I hope he watched that, and I hope he felt every ounce of betrayal and vitriol that, like, oh, I hope he thought that he had it in the bag, and he realized through that documentary that he fucked up. He picked the wrong one.
Oops.
Right.
I think that there's that part of me where I'm like, I have a lot of pleasure knowing that he watched that and was probably like sphincter tight, you know, like, you know, oh, I didn't fully get away with this. Like, yes, the ministry knew I was a canoodler and doing bad things, but you know, I mean, it kind of skirted past it, and I got ousted, and now he's still trying to get the headquarters compound space in Oak Brook, Illinois. He's still trying to get it back. He is currently in a lawsuit against his own ministry to try to acquire it back, because he stepped down as president or owner of the company because of all the allegations and the lawsuits, thinking that on the honor system, this is where I'm like, he has a level of naivety sometimes to me, where I'm like, you're an idiot for not getting legal papers drawn up saying, I'm going to step down for a year while this stuff cools off. Then I want my ministry back. And look, grifter or not, like, if I had something taken away from me that I spent my whole life doing, I would like it back too. But he didn't put anything in writing. It was this weird, dumb honor system. So I'm like, you deserve it if you're that dumb.
Fucking idiot.
But he tried to start like a university. It's so embarrassing. It's called Embassy University, and you should totally look it up. It is hysterical.
The basic Embassy University of camp training.
We've gone from basic, advanced, and institute to embassy and university. They also call all of their online presence with social stuff, they call it Embassy Media, where you can buy more of their materials and stuff. This is the IBLP side. Bill Gothard's not involved with it anymore. But regardless of Bill, like, Bill's going to die in his house in, you know, Naperville, Illinois, but over here, or LaGrange, but over here in IBLP land, over here in IBLP land and Big Sandy and all of that, there are still the people that adhere to his teachings. And though they have scrubbed his name from everything they talk about and everything that they share, and all of their testimonies that they give online now have erased Bill from the scene of the crime, however, they would not be there were it not for him. So it's very interesting to me to be like, you know what? We've thrown out the baby, but not the bathwater. We threw the man child out, but we're still going to hold on to all of his principles, which are the most damaging part, and the part that damaged thousands of children that were raised in this stuff. But their numbers have dwindled. There's barely a scratch of human beings that go to these family camps now. I unfortunately
even
know
believe they
people
still
that
have the
still go. And it is frightening to me that even in the small number, I feel in my soul, what panics me so much, and is why I will not shut up about this, is that kids are still being harmed. You can look at me in the face and say, well, I don't spank them. Fine. Are you giving them education that they can then leave the home and go and be the person that they are meant to be on this planet without you saying God doesn't want you to do that? Because that's neglect. And if anybody knows a family that is in ATI, you need to pay more attention to that family and ask a bunch of questions. And if you start sniffing and they do not pass the smell test, CPS.
Yes.
Give
Yes.
those children
Yes.
a chance to not be harmed to the length that I was, that even in my mid to late 40s, I am still having to battle and deal with, and I will have lifelong repercussions from it. I have cutaneous lupus, I have IBS, I have a circulatory disorder. It is off the chain what my upbringing did to my body and what I had to fight for my mind to overcome and break free of. And I'm still dealing with the instinctual stuff that was conditioned in me. So if you see this kind of stuff, I don't even care if you're like, I don't know, I'm just like a hesitant. I don't want to like get into somebody's business. Get in their business.
Get in their business.
The child matters. The
Get in their
parents
business.
need to be called to account, because look, if nothing bad is happening, they have nothing to fear.
Right. Yes. And wouldn't you rather be wrong one time?
Yes.
Wouldn't then wonder forever, or find out years later through the news or the town talk that you were right the whole time and you didn't do anything?
My beautiful aunts, two of my aunts, watched the documentary because that was my biggest fear. I wasn't worried about what the world thought, and give a shit.
Yeah.
But my family, my immediate family members, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my grandparents are all gone now, unfortunately. But I was just like, what are they going to do? Like, I did not promote it on like my Facebook page so much. I think after a little while I did, but I was just, maybe I did, I don't know. But I think I just made like one post. But I was like, a lot of people don't see posts right when they happen. So, I don't know that they'll watch this stuff. But I don't know. I don't even think 2 or 3 days went by. And my aunts called me up and they were just in tears, apologizing. They were like, we never knew. Like, we never. And I was like, it's not your fault. You know what I mean? Because I think they felt that guilt of like, oh my gosh, we could have done something. And I'm like, it's intentional that you did not know. The whole title, Shiny Happy People, that we termed it in ATI and IBLP, it's called Bright Shining Countenance. Ugh. And it's funny because when they asked me in the documentary, when I was interviewing, they were just like, oh, what does Shiny Happy People mean to you? I did not know it was a song. Of course, I have enough that I'm trying to like inform into my brain.
You weren't allowed to listen to secular music. How are you supposed to know about that song?
And even I've been playing catch up my whole life. So I'm just like, REM's not really my jam. Sorry, REM. Like, great song because wow, it changed my life. But I don't really know a lot of their music, and I'm not like, let me get every album. But they're like, what does Shiny Happy People mean to you? And I'm like, you mean Bright Shining Countenance? Because it was similar. And they told me later, they're like, guys, it's so wild how we asked that question and every single one of you like gives that answer, like bright shining countenance. I'm like, because that is our phrase. We have to always have a bright and shining countenance that shows off that we believe in God and we cannot detract from it ever. So I told my aunts it was intentional that we were conditioned to not let you know that anything bad was going on in the home.
Right.
So I can't fault you for that. Like, I'm not upset with you. So I want you to try to remove that from yourself. But obviously I can't do it for you, but I hold nothing against you. And honestly, hearing it from you now is like salve to my soul, because at least now you finally know.
Right. Just like that weight, just that
I don't
burden.
have to hide it anymore.
Yes.
Even as an adult, where like we would go to family gatherings and stuff, and I hated having to be near my stepdad. But then I would just imposter it. Hey, if I've impostered it before, I'll imposter it here. Like I'm the world-renowned imposterer of just like go against what you feel, but put yourself in it anyway. And we wonder why CPTSD and anxiety and all this stuff exist in my body, because I'm going against what my gut is telling me to do. And anyway, so it was just, I'm so glad that I no longer have to hide that part of myself or just withhold it from people. Like I have a big dirty secret, because that's how I always felt growing up. And then being in the world in the fashion industry, I felt like I just felt like they don't know that I'm also impostering in this space and then I really don't belong here. Like, hey guys, I'm a Christian cult kid.
Yeah. Well, and also the cult taught you whatever it is, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. If you're embarrassed, your fault. If you're trying to hide something, it's because it's your fault. If something doesn't make sense, your fault. If something feels bad, your fault. Like,
and if you feel guilty, you've given ground to the devil, and you've done something wrong. If you feel guilt, that's not how guilt works.
Right. And if you feel anything other than proud of yourself, it's because you've done something wrong. And then if you feel proud of yourself, that's pride.
That's also wrong.
That's also wrong. So fuck you.
Tell me where you're supposed to land in this space of goalposts. There's never a landing strip of where you're going to actually belong.
But also, like, don't be mentally ill. It's embarrassing for us as a group. Like,
because it's not mentally ill, though. There's no mental illness when it comes to fundamentalism.
Oh, right? There is. They just don't know it.
Well, of course we know it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if they think there's no mental illness in fundamentalism, look in a mirror.
It says mental right in there.
I'm just saying.
Fundamentalism.
I put the fun in fundamentalism, and I put the
fun
mental
and the mental.
Yeah. God. Oh well, Lindsey. I realized I just looked at the clock because I was like, wow, it's getting dark. It's getting dark so early. I'm so sorry. I kept you an hour longer than I said I was going to. But no regrets. I have no regrets.
Neither.
If somebody's listening to this and maybe they relate to the whole story, maybe they relate to parts of the story, what would you say to somebody who's listening to this and they feel like heard and seen for the first time, but they don't know what to do with that now? What would you say to them? What advice would you give somebody?
I think first off, I would say it's okay to sit with it for a little bit. Like, allow yourself to take it on. If this realization, after having so much therapy, my body like responds to me. It's very weird. And so I get like goosebumps. So I'm sorry if I'm like, because it's like it's very shivery. But it's, to me, it's like my body's going, yes, this is true. What I'm saying, it's like validates me in a weird way. But I feel like you need to sit with it and accept it. Because I think when we go through this like grief cycle of realizing how much we lost, because I have 15 years at least that were lost from me, that were taken from me, and not just the years, but the development, the education, and then the things that were also stripped from me is like a good healthy sex life, having like the ability to connect with people in community and not always feel suspicious about people, being able to physically hug someone without feeling weird about their body touching my body. Like there's so many complex issues that come up. So I would say first, just sit with it. And like, if you need, like, if you're someone that like takes notes and stuff, just start like bullet point, just go and just bullet journal it and just like let it spill out of you so that you can expel some of it. And then, I would say if you can, and I know that our country in America does not make it easy, but if you can afford to see a therapist, look for a trauma-informed therapist, not just a normal run-of-the-mill therapist, but a trauma-informed therapist. And if you can find someone that specializes in religious trauma that is not religious bias, then go there. Surprise, surprise, my therapist is actually a Christian. Interesting. And I was like, I don't think it's gonna work. But then my friend was like, but she really seems to understand in a way that someone who's fully secular and didn't get raised in religion at all, and maybe hasn't really like done a deep dive in it, like she kind of already understands the cliff notes of Christianity. And I was like, I don't know. And I remember having a discussion with her. I was like, I'm going to cuss. I'm going to shout at God. I am not going to be nice to Jesus in our therapy sessions.
Yeah.
And she's like, this is your time. And I, for the first few sessions, I was like kind of testing it to see, like, does she really believe that? And after a while, I kind of just like forgot that she was one. She was my therapist, and we went through EMDR together for almost 2 years, and it changed me. EMDR is very hard. I know it's not for everybody, but I implore people to at least give it an attempt if you have been through this level of abuse. And CPTSD, or if you've had sexual assault against you, it really does help the body to reconnect with the mind, and it helps you to really create a new narrative about the abuses that you experienced. And I couldn't believe how it just like molded together my body and myself. So that as well. If you are someone who has been really stunted like myself with the religious trauma, I would say maybe consider, with the talks of your therapist, looking into medications with a psychiatrist or your general physician, because that did also help me as well. I could not brain my body to function differently, because the indoctrination and conditioning that happens to us is on a much deeper level, in a part of our instinct that we can't just mind away. We can't just like read some memes, laugh at something, listen to a podcast, and then not have IBS issues the next day still. That healing has to happen through the help of your body getting to a state of not being in fight, flight, fawn, and freeze.
Right.
You can't always get there on your own. And I'm not saying that you can't, but I think that especially with religious abuse, we are taught that all of these things are wrong.
Yes. And they're all on us.
Yes. And how dare you? And if you do this, then you are so much less than. And I'm like, you know what happened when I did all of this together? I became more than.
Right.
I became highly capable. I became highly functional. I became a lot more, my legs are literally like pulsating goosebumps. It's so bizarre. I'm like, okay, baby, yes, I know. We're speaking the truth. She's showing right now. She's like, yes. But it really shifted me into a space of being able to actually discover me. Because when you go through this much layered 7-bean layered dip of trauma, like, you don't know who you are. You might not be you might not even be a bean dip. You know what I mean? Like, you might be something completely different. You're like, I just want to like dump out the whole dish and be like, well, who am I? And this happened to me before the documentary, where I was like, I really don't know. I don't even know if I can do the documentary, because I don't know if I'm like the authentic Lindsey even. And how do I go when I talk about all of this? And then I'm like, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure me out, but I pushed through that and was like, I need to do the documentary. Bless you.
I'm back.
You'll probably cut it out, but she's a really cute sneezer. But through emptying out all of the garbage and having all of this assistance, realizing that it didn't mean that I was weak or that I was incapable. It really just said, the damage is so significant that I have to go through a level of triage and re-healing myself in a place that is beyond my capacity as an individual human. I cannot just self-heal.
Right. Yes. And I think also just seeking help is one of the first blocks to pull down when the rules were all self-blame. Like, even if you're just telling your partner, even if you're just telling your best friend, even if you're just telling a colleague or anybody who will listen, like, that, because so much of the ingrained trauma is involved in, you're not enough, you're not doing enough, you're not praying enough, you're not this, like, you're not Christian enough, you're too this, like, your body is too, like, everything is so put on the people in that religion or in that environment that I honestly think, even if you're in a position where you can't maybe talk to like a psychiatrist or a therapist, just talking to someone and admitting to yourself that it's okay to have assistance and help of any kind is just a huge step in the right direction. But
it helps
yeah,
rebuild trust. It helps you to it helps you to get it outside of yourself.
yes,
You know,
yes,
I had
and
a
it
lot of
helps.
friends too that were begging me to go to therapy, and I was so scared of it, and then the cost of it and everything else. And they both allowed me to just tell them everything,
Yes,
you know?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
And it
so
helped.
so many of these environments also tell you this is what people are going to say and this is what they're going to do. And
Yeah.
when you get the first opportunity to see that that's actually not true at all, and
Right.
people are going to be like, I tell me about it. I don't know what to say right now, but if you keep telling me, maybe I can come up with something helpful to say. Like
Yeah.
yeah, like I've been that friend a couple times where it's like, if you're coming to me for advice, I have nothing. If you're coming to
Right.
me to get that off your chest, girl, get it off your
Cool.
chest. Like,
Yep.
because I don't know, but I want to hear what you've been through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, man, that's wild. But I am so appreciative, Lindsey, that you took over 3 hours of your day to share your story with me
Oh
and
my
to
God, girl, yes.
yeah, and to deep dive and to really just people who don't grow up religious, they don't understand how risky and how um rebellious what you're doing right now is. You know,
Oh yeah.
for people who grew up normal, they're like, she's out for a podcast. I don't understand. For people who grew up religious, we're like, oh shit, this is huge. And
Yeah.
you've done huge again and again and again and again and again. Um and man, I just really appreciate you. I appreciate you and I appreciate your story and your honesty and your friendship because
Yeah.
man,
Absolutely.
we got to stick together. We really
Absolutely.
do. Yeah.
We'll do more. I'm sure we could just like fill podcasts and
Oh yeah.
conversations,
Oh
plenty.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I appreciate you too. When I heard your conversation with Chad, I was like, oh my God, she's my home fry, man. I cannot wait to talk to her. And then our schedules just kept like going
Yes.
nuts. And I'm like, someday we will lock this down for us. So I'm really glad, and thank you too, honestly, for like giving me this much space. I know that my story is never a short story, and I've tried many times to just kind of cliff note it, and it just feels like it gets so lost on the emotional level, on the depth of the complexity. You can't cliff note this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for giving me this platform and this time, and your ear and your own compassion, but also like just your ability to kind of like sit and hear it all, because I understand like I'm not necessarily trauma dumping on you, because I know we're talking
Right.
about the situation, but this
Right.
kind of stuff can feel like a trauma dump. I mean, I will probably come offline and just go and be like, God, I need a glass of wine, and then I have to go and be like, I'm doing a photo shoot tomorrow and I got to go and start working on a wig, and it's like, I have to compartmentalize it. But the last thing I really want to just say is that it's one step at a time, all of this, in
Yes.
getting away from it, whether it's a massive, like dramatic escape from something, or if it's like, I'm going to just slow burn my way and figure it out. I am 24 years away from this, but my body still lives in some of those spaces 24, 25 years ago. But when I look back at all of it now, I cannot believe the person that I am now,
Yes.
what I do, where I am, the rooms I get to walk into. No one's messing with my feet,
Yes.
and I get
God.
to be creative and
Yes.
rebellious. From a Fundie perspective, I'm rebellious and I'm worldly and I'm sexual and I'm sinful and I don't give a shit,
And you're
because
over
I
35.
love it and I'm 46, bitches. Like
Yeah.
I get to have fun and I get to play and I get to experience life in a completely different lens. I do not see through a Bill Gothard lens anymore. I took those glasses and I shattered them with my feet and I threw them in the dumpster.